Survivor specialist Phil and Alexa are back, and tonight we are joined by my winner pick, who I was so confident was going to pull this out, Brendan Shapiro, who 5 minutes after hearing Bradley's tell-all with us, he said, guys, I need to come on there now. I need to tell the real story. So we are so happy to be joined by Brendan tonight. Brendan, thanks so much for coming on, and we're looking forward to hearing all the goods, all the truth here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This whole experience has been great, and I'm really excited to be on with you guys. And thank you. I'll say this now so I don't forget later. Thanks for the work that you guys do to pump up Survivor, because I think Survivor's managed to be what it is after all this time because of people like you who just pump the show and are so interested in it and kind of drive the engine. So anyway, you guys do a great job, and for all the fans out there, if you want the best insight, this is where you go to get it, right here.
Wow. Thank you so much, Brendan.
This is the nicest anyone has been to us 30 seconds into a podcast.
We'll see how it is in another.
Yeah. Once we start defending Bradley, then Brendan will be like, and actually never listen to these guys again.
Well, I know Bradley and Phil are boys, right? I've seen them in a video together. So I may be fighting an uphill battle here.
And I got to say, the fact that
fantastic.
Yours was great. The fact that Kellen didn't give it to either you or me is it's heartbreaking. Yeah. It's terrible. Your son was fantastic in that video. Very good,
Thanks.
Jeff.
Yeah, no, he did a good job.
Yeah, we're gonna need Jeff to talk to him.
Yep.
For sure. That's what somebody was saying. Blood versus water, right? There you go.
That's the dream, man. So that kid is so he's one of those people who he's a super fan, but he's also got this crazy brain where he can remember things like nobody else. So like if you asked him right now, he's out with his girlfriend right now. But if you were sitting here and you asked him, you could say, hey, what was the boot order of season 23? He just rattled it off. Like you could ask him what color buffs various tribes wore 10 years ago. He knows it off the top of his head. So he loves Survivor, and he's a lot smarter than I am, and more charming and more handsome. So maybe he'll crack one day.
Oh my God. I made the mistake at that pre-finale thing of taking a picture with you and Stephanie Gonzalez, which I think we're going to post. And I stand there and it's like, what is this? What is this? So if your son is even more handsome than God, glad I didn't take a picture there. But anyway, so I was really convinced, Brendan, before this game started. I was like, this guy has everything. I first said Dominic was going to win, and I was like, no, Brendan's going to pull this out. And so you just actually talked about the huge Survivor fandom of your son and how you just rattle all this off. Was it well known how big of a fan you were? Because I thought this guy's got the best combination. I felt like you would hold it back. Did you, or did you let everybody know?
Yeah, it's a good question. See, at first I did. My strategy was show up and tell the story that like, oh, my son's really into the show. So, we started watching together last year. I liked it. I, submitted an application and here I am. Isn't this great? Like high fives all around, right?
It's a good lie. That's a good one.
Yeah, like that was kind of the deal. But because I thought I'd stand out if I made it obvious how big a fan I was of the show and how much I understood the show. So that was the strategy. And then we're like a day in, and it became obvious that everyone in my tribe, like all the Malolos, were huge fans, almost all of them. And so they're talking about like super. Like just like really in the weeds stuff about Survivor. And then I started to feel like, well, if I don't jump in, I'm going to feel like I'm left out. Right. So, and that's the thing in Survivor, you just don't want to stand out as anything. You don't want to stand out as too much of anything. And if I felt like, so I actually turned this corner. I'm like, I need to tell them I know the show too. So I kind of let it be known that I was a bigger fan than maybe I was originally intending on doing. Because I had applied, some people know my story, but like I had applied really pretty much every year since 2001. And the first year I applied, I got a little bit down the path. And back then they had these semifinal interviews where on your own dime, you'd have to travel to like if you got a call, so you'd send in your VHS tape, right? And then
gosh.
Yeah. So like you'd cut out a picture of yourself, you'd send that in, like in the mail, you'd send a VHS tape, all this kind of stuff, right? So I did that. And in my very first time, I got a call. And it went well enough that they invited me to go, if I was willing to find my way there, to a regional interview. So I flew from the DC area, from Virginia, to Atlanta for this regional interview. And I sat down and I interviewed with these people. And I was probably 25 or 6 at the time. And I got married young and so my son, who's now 17, I had a baby boy, and I was married and all this. I remember coming back and I told my wife, I'm like, there's no way. Like, they're not looking for married with children out of their 25-year-olds, you know? So, so and sure enough, I never got another call. And then I kept applying though every year. And then a number of years ago, so every now and again I'd get a call from casting, and sometimes I'd blow it, you know, on the phone, and that would be it. Well,
so it would be a phone interview, not a
yeah. So the way it would start is, you know, if they liked you well enough from watching your video, they call, right? And so I'd have this phone interview, and once or twice, like I don't know, I was too nervous or whatever, I messed it up. So like that was it. And then it was for season, for the last Blood versus Water, I had sent in an application, and this time I like uploaded a video, and you know, we were little down the path. So it was the second. Turns out it was the second Blood versus Water, because I got a call from a casting person, and they were like, "Hey, we noticed that that your wife is a professional triathlete," which she was at the time, and like, do you think she'd be interested in playing with you? Because we're going to do Blood versus Water again. So like really quickly, we made videos and whatever. But we got down the path, and in the end, basically, I was told like, "Hey, you guys are the last ones not to make it to LA for finals."
Oh my God.
But the casting person told me, she was like, "Listen, I like you. I think you're right for the show. It's just not right now, but like maybe one day." So, so just keep kind of sending applications. You can send them directly to me. So the very next opportunity, I sent her an application and didn't hear anything. And like a year passed, didn't hear anything. 2.5 years after we had our last conversation, I got a call out of the blue, and it was that same casting agent. She's like, "Hey, time's right. We need somebody like you. So do you think you can make it to LA for casting finals?" And there it was. So,
wow.
So it was a long road to get there, you know? I forgot. I've kind of gotten off topic. I don't know what we're
No, that's fine.
Well,
so that was the first time that you'd made finals, or had you made finals before that?
Yeah. So I made it. So I had never made finals. And my understanding is like, if you make finals, I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I think if you make finals and they get a really good look at you and they say no, like that's no is no. I don't know that people come back from multiple finals. I could be wrong, but so I made finals, and you know, you get there and it's like, you don't know, because you know, you may show up to finals and theoretically it's about a week long, right? So if you make it all the way through, it's about a week. And I was actually in finals casting for season 35. So it was December of, I don't even know what year it is. I'll lose track of years. December of 2016, I guess. And it was a round of casting for 35. So it started with like 24 of us on day one. By day 2 or 3, we were down to like 20. And then it just, as the week goes on, right, it keeps getting pared down more and more and more. And so every day you hang in there is a good day, and you know, the stakes keep getting raised, because you start with, you know, interviewing with Lynn, the casting director, and then eventually you get to hopefully work your way to Jeff and Mark Burnett and all these people. So you know, if you make it through the week, that's a good sign. Doesn't mean you're in, but it's a good sign. And I made it through the week, and what's really cool is, so there were like 24 of us to start the week. We ended with, I think, 10, and the 10 were 8 people that ended up playing 35. And Jenna and me. So and so I got pushed to, I think I was really, really close. I was told I was really, really close to being on 35. And at the last second, they decided to push me. They felt like it was a better fit to push me to 36. I'm not sure it was a better thing for me, but
exactly.
So I got pushed to, but what's cool is, like, when you're out there in casting, you know, you can't talk to anybody. I think that's pretty well known, because they don't want anyone to have an advantage when you get into the game. But you're in common spaces with these people. Like, you have to eat, right? And they give you a little bit of gym time and stuff like that. And so there are people there to monitor, to make sure you don't communicate. But you can look at people, right? And so my group got pared down further and further and further, to the point where at the end of the week, like, so we had 24 to start in my casting group. It went down to 8. Or down to 10, and those 10 were in kind of 3 different subgroups. So the subgroups would be like the people that you go, like, you have dinner at the same time, you go to the gym at the same time. And the 3 of us that made it all the way through in my subgroup were Mike Zahalski, Chrissy Hoffbeck, and me.
Oh wow,
that could be a dream alliance right there.
So when I saw no kidding, that was no kidding. So when I saw the cast for 35, I was like, please, and I knew that I had been. So I found out that I wasn't going to make it to 35. I hoped I'd make it to 36. There was no guarantee. So then when the cast was kind of leaked or released or whatever for 35, I was hoping I wouldn't see Chrissy or Mike because, you know, like to the extent that you can develop a rapport with somebody without talking to them, you know, you want to see familiar faces when you get out there. And I was hoping I wouldn't see them on the 35 cast because that might mean I had a shot at playing with them in the 36 cast. And sure enough, they were on 35 and they did great. And they're both friends of mine now. But yeah, so anyway, there's a little bit about the casting process.
6 other heroes, healers, hustlers who made it to that top 10.
So in my group, we had Alan, Pat Bolton.
You had a great group.
Jessica, Cole, Ben.
Wow.
Gosh, who else? Let's see. Oh, Chrissy, Mike, and then one more. I'm trying to think who the last one was. It'll come to me. And what's cool actually is you know, like when you play Survivor, like the Survivor community is really like they're just really nice people by and large, and so people will reach out to you, direct message or whatever. And Ryan from 35 reached out to me and he's like, "Oh, you're the guy." I'm like, "You're the guy that they were talking about." When, like deep in the game, Chrissy and Mike and Ben were all talking about that there was this guy that they were going to align with in the game.
Oh,
and they were surprised not to see him out there. And Ryan was like, "You must be the guy they were talking about." So anyway,
you should have gone on. They should have put you on 35.
Yeah. But hey, I made some good friends on 36.
I wonder if it was because like on 35 you had a lot of people already like with like the family man type of thing. Like I know like you might not fit everything that they had. Like Ben really was a Marine, but he kept saying, "I'm playing for my family. I'm doing this for my family." Mike was doing it for his family.
Yeah.
And I wonder if like they have started to shy away from that more now. It's become more of like the younger people who are just out there and they're going to be good characters. And maybe like that's why it didn't happen. And on your season, it was like you and Stephanie were on the same tribe, but like it wasn't like Dominic was playing for his family, but it wasn't as much. So that's probably why they were like, "Oh, we can't have everybody playing for the same thing."
Yeah, I think so. I mean, although if you look at the cast of 35 and 36, it speaks to the fact, you know, they always talk about that they just look for the best 18, 20 people, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at the profile of the cast, like, you know, kind of if you look at the average age and background of the 35 cast and the average age and background of my cast, like they're very different.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that speaks to the fact that they really are just looking for compelling people. So, but yes, I agree. There's probably too much. You can have too much of one category, and so it would have been great for me to be in that cast because I wouldn't have stuck out quite as much as I did. You know, like on my cast, I was the oldest. On my tribe, I was the oldest male by 15 years, right? So. And I never dreamed at 41 years old in the game like that I would have been the oldest guy by 15 years. Like
That's insane.
That didn't seem like it would be possible. And when I got out there and saw, like, you know, pregame, when I saw everybody, I was like, "Oh boy, this is gonna be tough." I remember telling one of the producers before the game, like, "This, I must be the oldest guy here." And I was right. I mean, I was. So yeah, it was. But you know, I will say this: like the people on my tribe, on the Malolo tribe, were really good about making me feel like part of the group. Like they never made me feel like I was the old guy. And I decided, like when I got out there, I just decided to own it, right? Because I didn't think I could run from it, and I mean it was pretty obvious, right? So I just decided to own it and just try to seem as non-threatening as I could.
But go ahead, Alexa. What were you gonna say?
Are you sure?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm going super backwards. You said that on like night 1 at Malolo, they're all talking about Survivor, and so you're thinking, okay, I need to go back to being a super fan. Were they referencing old seasons, or were they saying, well, here's how we should build a shelter? Let's go get coconuts.
It was like all about old seasons, right? So they were all talking about kind of what had happened in the past, and they're going deep too, and talking about people that aren't your, you know, they're not just talking about Boston Rob and Tyson and, you know, whatever, like, or talking about game changers. Like they're talking about, I mean, shoot, like I think it was Michael who said his favorite player was like Denise Stapley or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was
that's not a random pick.
Yeah. So these are people that really knew the game by and large. And like even James will tell you, like he was one of the few people who was technically recruited because he had applied for The Amazing Race, and then I think they saw something in him, and so they asked him whether he'd be interested in Survivor. But even James, like you know, knowing James, it's not surprising, but like when he got picked to play the game, when he knew he was going to play, he binge watched. I think he watched like the last 15 seasons straight, right? So he was pretty familiar with what's going on, and so yeah, I mean, everybody knew what was going on.
Yeah. I wanted to say, so when I was younger, and I've always been like obsessed with Survivor since I was watching it, 10 years old. So when I was younger, I remember looking up the application to Survivor. And I don't think people understand now, because they always say go on cbs.com/casting. So I'm going way back too. But you go on cbs.com/casting, and it's like, here's your name, here's a 3-minute video, all this. Did you get the one that was like the incredibly long questionnaire, like when you first applied, where it was like,
yes,
it was like 20 pages of questions? Like,
yeah, it was stuff like if you could be have any elected office, what would it be? Stuff like that, right? And so the way it's changed is when you apply now, you upload your video, and if they like you, they call you, and then you have a conversation. And if they think that you're compelling on the foot, because like, look, anybody can prepare something that looks pretty slick. Yeah. So they want to see how you're off the cuff, right? So then they talk to you, and if they still like you, and if you are what you represent on the video, then I think maybe you keep down the process. So then they have you fill out what you're talking about, plus a whole lot more. So
you still do that now?
Oh yeah. You still do it, but it's like a second step or a third step.
Okay.
And if you get really far down the path, like before you go to LA for finals, if you make it that far, they want to make sure that they're not making an investment in somebody who's going to embarrass them, right? So. So there's a lot of background that you do, background check type of paperwork. It's a stack this high of paperwork that you do, because they want to be careful, understandably, that you're not going to do something foolish out there. So, and that you're not going to embarrass them. Like the last thing they want, I've not been told this, but I only suspect, like the last thing they want is to find out after you've, stepped on the beach for day one that that you've been arrested for something they don't know about, or that whatever, right? Like that you're going to do, that America's going to find out that you've done something terrible. So, so there's a lot of paperwork. They really want to get into who you are, and so like in the casting process, they do like very, very extensive, kind of like psychological testing, which I think is in part probably to make sure that you're fit to play the game, but it's also, I think, to kind of see how try to get their best guess of how you might interact. It's this whole big chemistry experiment, right? Like they want to get the right the right mix of people, and so it's very exhaustive. Like they have this thing down to a science, and I think it's art and science, but they put a lot into it, and so for America, like when you see somebody out there, they have been through an amazing, like I would say, like the process of getting from applying to getting on the show, it's probably you've got to clear like 99 or 100 hurdles to get there, and you trip on anyone and it's over. Because it's, it's big business for these guys, and they want to make sure they do it right, and they're invested in doing it right. So everyone that gets out there has been vetted pretty extensively.
I've always wondered about the psychological testing, and you can say as much as you are allowed to. Is it like, I don't know, I guess, do they ask how you would act in certain situations? Do they just observe you? I've always wondered how that works.
It's a lot of paperwork, right? So if you've ever done like personality testing, it's that type of stuff. And I think, like I said, I think they just want to make sure that it's a lot of stuff that gets to, are you of sound? I don't know, like, are you safe, right? Are you going to be safe? Are you going to pose a danger to yourself or anybody else, right? And that's why you've seen 36 seasons, and no one's, other than a medical evacuation, not seen anyone really go off the rails. Brandon Hance, I guess.
I was about to say it, but I was like, I'll let you get there.
At this point, that was a while ago.
Yeah, and we're talking about, they've had over 500 people play this show. To have one person in like incredibly difficult, in an incredibly difficult and stressful situation and environment, have only 1 out of 500 plus. Yeah. Get a little wild, like that's a pretty good record, I'd say.
And I think that the only one, and this could be complete hearsay, but I believe Kathy Sleckman they also were like, we need to get her off the island. Like, I don't think she was like ready to quit, but I think that she was like getting to the point where like, we need to get her out of here. And I don't know, that could just be hearsay, but for some reason I think, but she wasn't like Brandon Hance where it was like, I'm literally going to kill somebody right now. Like that's
I think it was for her benefit.
It was for her benefit more than like the rest of the tribe. Cause I remember like back in Amazon, they have Matt sharpening the machete and Rob's like, why does he need it so sharp? Like what is he going to do with that? He's cutting coconuts. But it is funny because like I always remembered that huge application. And then when I finally became of age to apply, it's this little thing. And I'm like, I don't even get to say anything.
Yeah, no, if you get past the first hurdle, there's more.
Okay. That's good to know. There you go.
I'm sure there'll be plenty, Phil.
I was gonna say all these people who get on because their 3-minute video, they were better, you know. But so you were talking about, you know, you've talked like a lot about this casting thing, but then you were also talking about you felt like I would have never thought I would be 15 years older. But you're a gym teacher. My uncle is a gym teacher, and he was a track coach, and he's the kind of guy who, because of that, he actually gets along really well with people who are like college aged, high school age, stuff like that. Did you think that would be beneficial to you? Were you like, okay, that's what I have to like use to my advantage here with like the younger kids?
Well, so I've been a teacher, but I am a teacher. But like the secret that I didn't tell when I was out on the island was that I had only been a teacher for like a year and a half at that point. Mm-hmm. So I was a career switcher, right? So like at around age 40, I changed paths. So like out of college, I worked for a big consulting firm. And then after a number of years, I opened my own business. So I had a retail business I had a retail business. Mm-hmm. And after 13 years of doing that, I sold my part of the business and became a teacher. So, you know, I didn't have that much teaching experience to lean on.
Okay.
The benefit for me in the game was like, I had been doing it long enough that I could talk the talk. Like it, you know, mm-hmm. If anyone wanted to question me on it, like it was very believable because I had actually lived it for a year plus. So, but my experience in the business world, like I ran a retail business where like the vast majority of my staff were 20 somethings, you know, so I was used to dealing with people, kind of the age of the folks that were out in Survivor. So I guess to that extent, like that was valuable experience. Like mm-hmm. I've been in industries and I've been in situations where having, you know, being able to relate to people was really important, kind of in everything I've done after graduating college. And so I guess, I leaned on all that experience.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because when I saw the original cast and then I saw who you were on a tribe with, I was like, he's got Donathan, he's got Jacob. Brandon's got this really calm demeanor to him. He's a gym teacher. Like, I'm sure that like he's probably seen these types of kids in a gym class not being good athletes or whatever, and like he's like the one who picks them up. And I had created an alliance before the game where I said it was going to be you, Jacob, Donathan.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah. I had this whole alliance planned out, and it didn't work. I don't know why. I thought you guys would have done it.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. So here's the deal about Survivor. Like the first 3 days are wild. Like, and it's so much of it's dumb luck, right? So I'll give you an example. We hit the beach, we introduce ourselves, and then like right out of the gate, it's like, okay, we got to build a shelter, we have to get fire, we have to figure out where everything is. And so it's almost random, right? Because I looked around and I'm like, hey, does anyone have construction experience? Anyone know how to build stuff? And like everybody looked at their feet. And so
Wendell Holland gets $1 million.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
So you got Wendell Holland, and then you've got Dom, who's a construction supervisor on the other tribe. But so I looked around, and then Michael kind of gave me a look like, hey, let's give it a shot, right? Mm-hmm. And there it was, right? So that was the start of my relationship with Michael. I mean, it could have gone a different way, where, you know, it could have been that James stepped up and said, yeah, let's build a shelter together. And then I would have spent, you know, the bulk of the first day hanging out with James, you know? Mm-hmm. So much of what goes on in the relationships that are built out there it's almost just dumb luck, you know, like how do things pan out? It's, you know, it's like the butterfly effect, right? Like one little decision, glance, look, conversation, whatever, results in a relationship that carries people through the game. So like in the early going, I'd spent a lot of time with Michael. And then, so he and I got really tight real fast. And then Michael, was spending time with Libby, kind of working that relationship. In the meantime, I felt like I was in a pretty good spot with Laurel, because, you know, I had picked her in that first challenge. Mm-hmm. And we just hit it off. Like I guess I can't explain it any better than that. Like we just, you know, we had a really good relationship. And so, and Laurel was my bridge to Donathan, because really quickly, Jacob and Donathan kind of reached out to Laurel and tried to bring her in. Gonzo was the one that was kind of out on an island, and which really kind of speaks to why she got voted out first. And this gets to like how wild those first 3 days is. Like, it could be anybody. It really could. And in Gonzo's situation, like, she just didn't happen to be real tight with anybody in those first 3 days. And it wasn't because she was pissing anybody off, or, I mean, it just didn't work out that way. Right. So we had this 5-person alliance that was Michael, Libby, me, Jenna, and Steph Johnson. And at the same time, I was getting information from Gonzo so Gonzo was kind of coming to me and wanted to work with me. And then Laurel was working with me and kind of giving me information. So I was getting it kind of all different ways. And James, I was friendly with James. And so the only person where I felt like I didn't have a real good connection at first was Jacob. And I think with Jacob, you know, he just came out of the gate hot, and maybe a little too hot. And so it made people a little bit uneasy. And I think he was just so excited to get out there and kind of prove himself. And also I think he felt on the outside even before, I don't know, I felt like he came in feeling he was on the outside looking in when I didn't think he was. And so as a result, he maybe looked for the idol, you know, sooner than the rest of us did, and that kind of stuff. I don't know. You should talk to him. He might give you a different accounting of things. He may describe it differently, but I felt like he didn't feel comfortable right out of the gate, and I don't know. It almost to me felt like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and then maybe that's not fair. I mean, again, you have to ask him, you know, kind of what he was feeling in that moment. But I felt like I kind of knew what was going on everywhere. Gonzo came to me and said, "Hey, I really want to work with you." And Gonzo scared me out of the gate because she seemed really like almost too slick. And in pregame, I think she undid herself a little bit. We've all told her this, so okay, we're all apart pregame, right? Like, we can't talk to each other. We can't interact. So you're supposed to be away from everybody else, but she was like really away from everybody else. Like, so she just seemed like such a loner where she didn't want to engage. So for example, like if we're all eating in the same space. Like, I would go out of my way to try to sit near somebody, like everybody. Right. So if I hadn't, like, if Alexa and I are out there together, like, and I haven't had a meal sitting at the same table across from Alexa, I'm going to make sure I do it before it's all over. Right. Because I just want to at least smile at her, whatever. I try to engage, right? Seem approachable. And Gonzo, I think, was, you know, I mean, she was really worried about the rules. Like, nobody wants to get kicked out. We don't know. Like, we show up with 20 people. Is it a 20-person season? Is it 18? Like, are two of us going to find out that we're the alternates? You know, like, so all that's running through our heads, right? So pregame, she just seemed more detached and aloof than everybody else. And so going into the game, I think we were all predisposed to think that's what she was. And so when she came to me and said, "Hey, I want to work with you," instantly, I just didn't quite trust it. I wish I had in retrospect, but I didn't quite trust it. So I don't know where I'm going with that, but
how it ended up with her being the first person to go home.
Yeah,
it's just been so, like, it was not spur of the moment, but it sounds like all these just kind of happened at once.
So that first vote, like, sometimes what you see and the way it unfolds on TV is pretty much exactly how it happened. Sometimes it's not. And that first vote is a good example of where there was another person in the mix there to get voted out that first vote. And it just never made the edit. And I think part of it, it's like, there's so much going on. It's sort of nuanced that, like, you don't see everything. And it's hard to show everything, particularly if you're going to boil 3 days of play into like 47 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to do. Right. So the deal in that first vote was everybody but Jenna and Steph Johnson got to a point where they were on board with getting rid of Jenna because Steph Johnson and Jenna were really tight. Like, it was obvious right out of the gate that the two of them were really, really close. And on top of that, they were putting out feelers to the other women about an all-women's alliance. So, like, they went to Laurel and said, "Hey, Laurel, let's talk. Let's talk about getting rid of these guys right away." And they went to Gonzo and said the same thing. Well, Gonzo and Laurel came to me and said, hey, Steph and Jenna are talking about getting rid of you guys. Like, and we don't think it's a good idea. And so Michael, and so I had, everybody except for Steph and Jenna were on board with saying, okay, we got to get rid of one of them and kind of break up that power couple. If you want to call it that, after 3 days. So the plan roughly was get rid of Jenna, not because she was annoying anybody or really anything except for the fact that I felt like she posed a threat to me and everybody else was okay with it, to say, hey, let's split these up before they really get rolling. So that's that was the plan, right? And in the meantime, Donathan, we talked about it, like, all right, well, what are we going to tell Jenna and Steph about who we're voting for? And so we said, well, let's tell them and Donathan actually was complicit in this. Donathan's like, you can tell them it's me. Because Donathan kind of was self-aware to the point, and almost too self-deprecating, where he was like, listen, I know I'm the weakest. I know I'm, whatever. So if we tell them it's me, they're not going to doubt it. Right. So then you see in the edit, you see these conversations where Steph Johnson's saying, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe not Donathan, maybe Gonzo. Right. And but all along we're thinking, now we'll tell them it's Donathan, and then, or maybe Gonzo, but then we're really gonna vote for Jenna. And then we got about an hour or so before the vote, and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, wait a second. Like, if we do right now, and I had been picked as the leader, like, on day one, which is not a great spot for me to be in. And so if I'm the leader, I better not, like, we better have harmony at camp. Like, because if the knives come out early, like, I could be in real trouble. So my whole goal was, coming out of the first vote, I want everyone coming back singing the same tune. Everybody's happy, right? So last second, and I knew that there was some noise about getting rid of Gonzo, because Jenna and Steph thought that's the best play. And talking to Laurel and James and Libby, like, they were all on board with getting rid of Gonzo. They're like, okay, sounds fine. So at the last second, I ran around, because I figured, okay, we'll get rid of Gonzo. Jacob was at Ghost Island. We get rid of Gonzo. Everybody comes back and we're all happy, at least on the same page, right? We get rid of Jenna. Steph Johnson's going to lose her mind. Like, she's real strong personality. And now all of a sudden I'm in trouble, right? So at the last second, like, we're walking around, like, we're walking to tribal council, and I'm in Michael's ear saying, Michael, we just changed it. Like, we're going Gonzo. We're going Gonzo. Same thing with Laurel. I'm like, Laurel, we're going Gonzo, And I tried to make it seem like other people decided. I'm like, hey, they all want to go Gonzo, whatever, right? So we get to tribal council, and like, in Survivor, when you tell somebody at the last second the plan has changed, that gets everybody really nervous, right? So it was a wild day, but it was gonna be Jenna until an hour before, and then it was gonna be Gonzo. So we get to tribal council, and we're sitting there at tribal council, and Gonzo, to her credit, started to figure it out, like, because Jeff's trying to pull things out of people, and as much as we're all trying to kind of keep our cards close to our chest, like, Gonzo's perceptive, like, she's figuring this thing out. So you saw it on the edit, like, right before we're gonna vote, Jeff says, hey, does anyone have anything else to say? And then Gonzo gets up. So she gets in my ear first, and she's like, Brendan, who are we voting for? And I said Donathan. We're voting for, because that's who we had talked about prior. And she's like, are you sure? And I said, yep. So then she gets in Michael's ear, and this is the part you don't see. So she gets in Michael's ear, and Michael's sitting to my left. So she's in Michael's ear. So the back of her head is pointing to me. Michael's looking at me past Gonzo, and I'm just pointing at her. I'm doing like this, right?
Yeah.
Because he's giving me, like, with his eyes that, like, what are we doing, right? So then she goes down to the front row, and I remember her getting in Libby's ear, and Libby's turned around, craned her neck, and she's looking at me, and I'm going like this, right? So of course, so anyway, so the vote happens, and it's Gonzo, and she gets up, and this is the part that killed me, because I knew what was going to happen. I knew what happened when we were out there. She gets up, she walks to the end. Before getting her torch snuff, she looks at Jeff, or she turns around to us, and she looks me dead in the eyes, and she goes, "This tribe is a lion and 7 sheep."
Yes, she did say that. They didn't show it.
It's sad, right? So they cut out everything but the sad part. And so before the show, I told my kids, I told my friends, I'm like, oh, just wait. Like, your boy, like, just watch, it's gonna be awesome. Yeah. And then they didn't show it. I'm like, oh, come on. But in that moment when she calls me the lion, I was like, oh no, this is not good. Like, this is not what I need. But part of me is like, yeah, that's right. Like, So, and what was so great about it was we got back from tribal council, that night. And Steph Johnson was like, I don't know. Do you think she was calling me the lion? I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. So like I was able to
big sheep over here.
I was able to brush it off, right? So, and that's how the game started. But like that's not, that's not what you see. But the thing is, so Gonzo goes home. I mean, it could have been Jenna, it could have been me, it could have been it could have been anybody, right? So it's wild those first 3 days.
Well, I wanted to say, so you end up saying not Jenna because we don't want to piss off Stephanie Johnson. And it's funny because that has started to become more of a thing as Survivor's gone on, where these first boots, it's almost like we don't want to play the game yet. So let's keep it so that nobody really gets your read yet. It's like that was the easy vote. It's like Sierra Easton going home in Game Changers. Every single person just said we got to get rid of Sierra, and she goes home 9-1. Yeah. And I think that's become so much more of a thing recently. And it sucks for somebody like Stephanie, where it's like you guys were ready to vote out Jenna, but because she had one really close ally who would have been pissed, Stephanie had no shot. Now, had Jacob not gone to Ghost Island, Jacob goes home, I assume?
Yeah, I think so. And it was simply because, like, from my perspective, that I would have advocated for that because I don't want uncertainty, right? So, like, he had been out looking for the idol, and, it's been exaggerated. Like, it's not like he was out all day, every day looking for the idol, but we all had a pretty good sense that he had been out looking. And there was this kind of unspoken, I don't know, this unspoken rule that, like, just don't be that first one to do it. Mm-hmm. And we all had a sense that he was the first one to do it. So we didn't know if he had found something or what the deal was. So I think it would have been Jacob simply because there was a chance that he knew something or had something that we didn't. And so like, there you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think likely it would have been Jacob, although it's hard to say for certain.
It's funny though, what you were saying about Jacob earlier, how he, you said he was like, he felt like an outcast, like almost the entire time. And you said, you can ask him, but it almost felt like a self-fulfilling prophecy to somebody on the outside looking in. It was interesting that his whole game plan for those early days was like, just keep going to Ghost Island because I don't feel like I have any shot here. Yeah. And it was weird going into like day 6. It didn't seem like he really tried to make amends. It just seemed like, I need to go to Ghost Island again, otherwise I'm not surviving this. And he had to know, he's a huge fan. He had to know a swap was coming at 18.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I will say this, like this is my perspective, right? Like I'm not looking through his lens, right? So it could be that he was right. I mean, it could be that he was on the outside looking in, and I don't think he was, but maybe, who's to say I'm, my read on this is the right one. But I do think that I think that Jacob, so I've spent a lot of time with Jacob, as you know, I mean, in Ponderosa and after, and he's a great guy, by the way. And I got to spend more time with him at the finale and he's just a real quality guy. And so, maybe he did need to scramble. Maybe maybe it wasn't a self-fulfilling prophecy. I didn't sense that, but I'm not seeing the world through his eyes. So, maybe that's what he needed to do. And that was his all in play. We've all got to play the game a little differently depending on how we're coming into it. So I don't know, hard to say.
And how was the rice that he so wonderfully placed?
Yeah, watching that live. Yeah.
If you told me that I could digest dirt, I would have eaten it out. That I did not care. It didn't bother me a little bit. So
was that the first time you found out though? Was while watching on TV, or did he say to you guys like, "Hey, I put the rice"?
No, he didn't say it. So Stephanie Johnson walked up on him while he was doing it because we were a little dodgy on Jacob because we thought he was up to no good. So I had said, "Hey, let's all go out and see if we can find these yams that we had heard might be on the island, and let's do a yam party." And we kind of knew that he would hang back. And sure enough, he hung back. He's like, "Oh, guys, I'll try to get the fire." I forget what his excuse was. He was going to do something else. And so the plan was, we all walk away. We'll leave him on his own, and then we'll send Stephanie back, 30 seconds later to kind of spy and see what he's doing. And so sure enough, she walked up on him as he was kind of getting that rice away.
Oh, God.
And to her credit, she didn't mention it to us until after the game was over.
Oh, really?
So I think it was their little secret. So I didn't know I was eating sock rice until, until I watched it on TV.
There you go. Well, that must have been great. Like, damn. And that was the best rice you ever had, huh?
Yeah, just delicious. How was it in the moment getting picked as the leader? Because like you said, getting called out in tribal council is never good. And you walked onto the beach and 10 seconds in, they pick you. How do you feel? How did you feel about that?
Yeah. So Jeff says, okay, you all need to pick a leader. And immediately everybody just looks at their shoes, right? And myself included. Because nobody wants to be that person. But I kind of had this sense in my head, like I was like, look, I'm the old, like it's going to be conspicuous. It's going to look weird if I don't step up, like people are going to be like, it's almost going to stand out more if I don't at least half-heartedly volunteer. So I kind of looked up. The only other person to sort of half-heartedly look up and look sort of interested was James. So I'm like, all right, James. I didn't know his name. I'm like, hey, how about this? We'll do rock, paper, scissors. Loser walks out there. And believe this if you want to, but I'm really good at rock, paper, scissors. I always win or lose if I want to. So I lost it by design. But then it was like the begrudging leader, right? So I trotted out there, and then I was where I think I was supposed to be as far as the tribe was concerned, and probably as far as production was concerned. But it didn't look like I just took it. Like Chris took it, right? Like Chris was like, I got it, it's me, right? So that wasn't my play. Like I didn't feel like I could do that.
How are you really good at rock, paper, scissors?
I don't know. It's just it's one of my one of my gifts. A gift that didn't take me any farther than 17th place on Survivor, but
only if you could have done that to keep yourself in, right?
Yeah,
right.
That would have been easy.
Did you you didn't really get to interact with Chris, right? But at the time of that first moment when Chris pulls the thing, so they were saying that they were all yelling like pull it, pull it, pull it. Like that's what Kellen and Bradley told us. Like they wanted it pulled. But
okay, they were gonna lose.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. So we get out there. First of all, yeah, no, I didn't know Chris. I mean, I had observed him pregame, and so I had, I had my impression of him that was pretty well matched. I think what he showed in the game. And Chris, by the way, so I never interacted with him in the game at all. It's only after the fact, like when we've all gotten together for things, and he's a really good guy. But he's kind of what you see on TV, and he's a really good guy. So in any case, so we get out there and we're doing the puzzles, and basically, we're close enough that Chris and Des can hear me, I can hear them, right? So I said to Laurel, I'm like, Laurel, I know how to do slide puzzles. Take that piece, put it up there, take that, and I start directing her, right? I'm like, we're good, we got it. And so she very calmly is moving the pieces around, and Des is kind of frantic, just pushing pieces, and it was obvious that she didn't know, like there's a method, right? There's the way to do a 4x4 slide puzzle. Yeah. And she didn't know it. And so it was obvious to me, and I think to Chris, that like it was only a matter of time, and we were really close. And so he made the right call by pulling that lever, because they were going to lose. 100% they were going to lose.
That's funny, because as you're watching it live, you're like, wow, this guy's such an ass. But
yeah, no, it wasn't even close. Like it wasn't close. They were going to lose with like 100%.
And then Dominic raises his hand, and like you're on. So now you win this first thing. So like, I think we have to go through this, because you lost 3 out of the 4 challenge, the 3 out of the 4 immunity challenge that you were part of, but you win that first one. And Dominic raises his hand, and you had to already be saying to yourself, like, that tribe over there is going to just fight with each other the entire time. Like, is that what's going through your head? Or?
Well, so let's back up a step. That was a crazy first day, because you get the wake up call at like 2:30 in the morning, and you eat breakfast, and then you basically you get dressed. They make sure that they search you to make sure you're not bringing anything into the game, and then you get on these boats, and you're on a boat for a while, and then they put you on the like the boats you saw us on when we started the game. They put us on those boats, and they mic us up and all this kind of stuff. Well, I get seasick, right? So it's a long ride, and like when they idle the boats to put the mics on, like you're just doing this.
That's the worst feeling. I know exactly.
Like an hour, I was just white knuckling it, like the cold sweats, the whole thing. And we got to within, and I'm not kidding you, we got to within 45 seconds of the shore where you saw us pull up. And we idled for a second so they could make sure our mics were working. And I booted all over the side of the boat, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the game, like I've been waiting 16 years to get there, and I'm just puking over the side of the boat. The whole tribe, we've never spoken to each other. The first sound they've heard coming from my mouth is like me losing it into the sea.
Oh my God.
I wish they would have shown
that. Would have been amazing.
So
like
when
Chrissy
when we got to the beach, like when you see me get called up there, I mean, that whole sequence took like a minute or two. So I trot out there. I've still, like, my eyes are watering. I'm woozy. I'm hoping that Jeff can't smell the puke on my breath. Like, that's where I was in that moment. Like, I still have it, like, in my nose, It was, that that's how I started the game. So like, yeah, that was a bummer to lose all my breakfast before the game even started.
That's the last real meal you had for how long?
Yeah. For 12 days.
I think it was in Australia. They were coming in on the plane, and as they were coming in, somebody was sitting in the back seat just hurling into a bag.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna lie, I kind of wish they would have shown that. I think that would have been hilarious.
That been, and then for you to just get picked the leader right after.
And then get picked the leader. Right? It's like they picked him the leader after he's vomiting over the side of the boat.
Yep. Yeah. So that was not the way I wanted to start the game, but but it worked out. We won the challenge, and so we were feeling good about ourselves. And yeah, to your point, absolutely. Like we kind of figured that the other tribe was going to be the drama tribe. You know, like we assumed we thought Chris was what he was, just a really strong personality. We assumed that Dom was going to be like we kind of assumed what was going to happen. What happened was going to happen. We thought that those two would be butting heads, and sure enough, they were. So yeah, it was pretty. We kept talking on our camp. Like we'd go to tribal councils and stuff, and we'd be talking about how it was so peaceful and kumbaya and all that. And it really was. I mean, I was trying to keep it that way, right? But like everybody got along pretty well.
Well, and what's funny then is that Navidi ends up being the ones who won't break up the entire game. Like you guys lost the first two. They lose the first. You lose the first two challenges, and it's already like, what are we going to do? Because they just won't stop.
It's funny.
Loving each other.
So after the second vote out, so after we voted out Jacob, I was the morning that we did the swap. I was I was interviewed the morning we did the swap. I think I was the last interview before we actually headed down to drop our buffs and swap. And I remember a producer asking me like, "Hey, how you feeling? You guys have just lost 2 straight. Like, doesn't look that good." And I remember saying, I was like, Malolo's 0-2, but I'm 2-0. Like I'm good because this is going exactly how I need it to go. I'm in with everybody. Like I'm good. Like no problems. And then we swap. Of course that's the way. Like that. If there are Survivor gods, this is how they work, right? Like an hour later we swap, and not only do I swap into a minority, which statistically was the likelihood, right? Because we were down 2, but I swap into the wrong minority because, like on our side, the 5 Navidis were, they just stuck together, and they despite what they've told you since, believe what you saw on television. They wanted to pagong us, and those are the facts, and we'll get into that. And on the other side, like James and Laurel and Donathan and Libby and all that, like they thought they died and went to heaven, right? Like they get over there, and they figured what was what happened to us was going to happen to them, and they're not on that beach for 10 minutes before they're getting pulled aside, like, hey, help us vote ourselves out, right? Like it was incredible. So meanwhile on our beach, they're like, hey, listen guys, there's 5 of us and 4 of you, so this is how it's going to go. And it was it was a disappointment to say the least. It didn't go the way I wanted. Now it was up to me at that point to figure something out, and I did. It's the bottom line. But
so the one question I have, because I know there's going to be a lot of disputing.
This is going to be fun.
Questions as to our first interview. The main question that I had is that Bradley said that he came up to you and said, and essentially they were trying to get you guys to break up and say, hey, like ditch your people, come with me. And that you guys were just like, no, we're going to take this minority. We're going to,
so
we're going to sit together. How did that
so I guess we'll start at the beginning, right? So I watched Bradley on this podcast say that, and I think he used the word literally. I think he said that literally the first thing we did when we got back from the swap was that the 4 of us went down to the beach and cried. And he's thinking to himself like, oh, we haven't even lost a challenge yet. Why are you crying? Right? Okay.
He did. I remember hearing this.
Yeah, right. So so here's the deal about Bradley. So Bradley tells a really good story and occasionally tells a true story. And in this case, this is not one of the true stories. So the way the edit went and what you saw on TV was you kind of saw a snippet of a conversation that was had when we got back to camp, right? So the way it works in Survivor is when you travel back from whatever, tribal council or a swap or whatever, when you get back to camp, the mics are over your head and you can start talking, right? And start playing the game. And so I basically kicked it off. I'm like, hey, everybody, this is our camp. It's kind of crappy. Like, we don't know, like, we don't have anyone that's good at building stuff. We just kind of threw it up. We don't know, like, this is, you know, if you guys had better ideas or better thing going over at Navidi, by all means, you know, you're not going to hurt our feelings if you want to change something. Like, this is your house too now. So like, let's make it the best we can. And you know, let's figure it out. Right. That was the little speech, welcome speech I gave. Like, hey, we know it's not great. Let's make it better. If you know how to make it better, we're all ears. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the first words that's the first thing that happened when we got to our beach. Now, Bradley tells this story that we got to our beach and the four of us decided to go cry on the beach. Yeah. I will tell, so, you know, it's simply not true. And as to, you know, and he tells his story about like, oh, they would even sleep apart from all of us. And so here's the deal with that. I will not dispute the fact that it was really cold on that beach, surprisingly cold. Like I never knew that Fiji could be cold. So at night the wind just blew through. Like we were essentially right up on the shore. So the wind blew through pretty hard, and what that meant was it was cold at night. And what it also meant was that the fire would burn through wood really, really fast. So if you wanted to keep the fire going all night, which to my mind was a necessity given how cold it was, you had to basically be feeding that fire every 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. So for the time before they got there, for the 6 days before they got there, Michael and I were the primary fire people all night. So I don't know that I ever went more than 30 minutes without putting wood on the fire. So to be in the shelter and then get out and past everybody and then, you know, like it just didn't make sense. And to me, like for me, it was more comfortable being like right up next to the fire because it was so cold. So when the Navidi guys got there, I told them like, listen, and I was explicit. I'm like, it's not that I don't want to be with you guys, but I got to feed this fire all night. Also, I'm just more comfortable on the dirt than I'm on that bamboo. Mm-hmm. If any of you want to join us, please, by all means. Like, this isn't like Malolo exclusive. Come on in. Like, that was how it went. And so the story they like to tell is, well, they wouldn't even sleep with us. They wouldn't even sleep in the same area. And there again, I mean, that's, you know, it paints a picture, right? So it helps kind of defy the narrative that you saw on TV, which is what they said on TV, which is we want to knock them out one by one. We have 5, they have 4. We're going to take, I think, you know, there was a scene where Kellen said it. In fact, she said it to Steph and Jenna at one point. And, you know, you see Bradley say it on TV. So look, you can have creative editing and you can make things seem like different than what they were, by omitting things, but there's no like CGI effects to make, you know, to make it look like they were saying things they didn't say. Make no mistake, they shut us out. Like we wanted to try to pull them apart, like pull them to the side and have conversations with them. And that was hard to do. They did a good job of circling the wagons. Now, I don't object to the way they played the game. They played it in a way that I think made sense for them. So it's not that I'm mad that that's how they played it. I think it was a smart way to play it. But let's not revise history and say it went a different way. Now they got a lot of crap from it online because people people thought it was boring.
It is.
It was.
Yeah, it is.
And that's fine. And I think that they got sensitive about the criticism, and so now they want to make it seem like, well, we had as much to do with it as they did. But the reality is, I think we were a bit more welcoming and you know.
Well, and I think
yeah,
I don't know
if
I asked you. I might have asked James, but I asked somebody. I said, if you were in the same situation where you had the 5-4 advantage and you're really tight with your 5, you probably would have done the same thing.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, I think it was you. And you were just like, yeah, of course. Because everybody who says it was really boring, yeah, it's boring to watch. But when you're playing for $1 million, you think Bradley or Kellen give a crap if it's boring? Right. Like, this is their best game. You, Stephanie Johnson, and Michael, the 3 of you were like the 3 who it's like, well, any of them can win the game. So why are they going to sit there and be like, let's keep them along?
They're not going to be like, let's keep them on for ratings. That
no,
way.
Yeah. So I don't have any misgivings about the way they played it. And, so I'm surprised that Bradley doesn't want to own it at this point. But hey, that's all right.
How much warmer was it closer to the fire versus the shelter? Because we
felt like a fire close to the fire. So in fact, like one night, Michael actually, you know, we slept so close to the fire because it was cold that one time while he was sleeping, like I got up to put wood on the fire, and I noticed that one of Michael's shoes was on fire while he was wearing it.
Oh,
And so I woke him up, and like smoke was coming off of his shoe,
Oh
like
my
the
God.
rubber was melting and bubbling, and yeah. So that's how close we were to the fire.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Well, people forget it's winter in Fiji when they shoot
Yeah.
this.
And
Like,
the thing is, like, I don't want to oversell it, right? But like if you're in shorts, like it feels cold, right? Because I would say that the temperature, if I had to guess, the temperature probably got down in like the upper 50s,
mhm.
but with a stiff wind, like when the wind's blowing it, whatever it was, 20 miles an hour, whatever it was, like consistently, just steady, like that's when it feels cold, right? So if the wind were down, it wouldn't have felt that cold, but with the wind, it felt kind of cold, which is why it was so important to me to keep the fire going all the time and to like huddle next to the fire at night.
So how grateful are you that it was a dry season? Because what we hear for
man.
37 is that it's going to be
We hear it's
brutal.
bad.
Yeah, I actually, before the game, I think I still feel this way. Like I wanted it to be wet and miserable because my theory was if it's really horrendous weather and everybody just feels awful, they're going to be more worried about feeling awful and less worried about playing a game.
Mhm.
So I was actually kind of rooting for some rain. It would have been unpleasant, but I felt like I could deal with the unpleasantness. So I was, as strange as it sounds, I was a little disappointed that we didn't get rained on.
You're almost so it's almost like the Russell theory, and I'm not comparing you to Russell, don't worry, or if that's a compliment, I don't know. But it's the Russell theory of like he was so excited because his tribe was just like decimated. He's like, if they want to leave, they can leave. I'm the king, like because then nobody's looking at him because he's just he's having an easy time. He's like, I can deal with the elements. I remember him standing in the water with his arms out, like who doesn't love this? Like what are they doing? And you have Mick over in the corner, like literally shaking, can't stop.
Yeah. Well, and that's where like when they came over, you saw me on TV, and I was like, I don't get it. Like this is supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be unpleasant. Like I'm not sure why these people don't understand that. And I mean, I guess I do get it when I understand that they came from another camp that was a better camp. It was farther back in, so they weren't cold all the time. Like I guess by comparison, if you had to get swapped and then you get swapped into a worse situation, it's going to make you a little bitter. But I don't know. I don't know.
I got to ask you with Bradley. Bradley says that he wasn't complaining to you guys. He was complaining so that the camera people would, I think he said this on our show. He was complaining so that they knew it was unfair. Like, of course you guys are going to lose. This is so unfair.
This was for your benefit, Brendan.
Yeah, or was he really just trying to irritate the hell out of you guys?
No, I don't think he was trying to irritate us. I think he was just complaining because that's, because he complains. Now, I do remember, to be fair, I remember him saying a couple times, like he said to me once, or maybe in a larger group, he's like, it really isn't fair. Like it's no wonder, like you can't sleep over here. It's not fair that on Navidi Beach we could sleep and you guys can't sleep over here. So, I mean, like, I think that was part of it for sure. But also he just complained about a lot of things. And so I think it was yes to both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, that's fair.
Okay. Yeah. Credit's due.
But while we're on the topic of Bradley, we talked about the crying on the beach incident, which never happened. Now, I won't claim that nobody ever cried on the beach. I'm sure it happened. In fact, we saw Stephanie cry on the beach. We saw after I was voted out, we saw Michael cry on the beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it happened, right? But there was no group cry session, and Bradley sure as hell never saw me cry out there. So. But then there's this funny thing that happened on Twitter like months ago where, and I don't even remember why, but he claimed that during his, I guess it was maybe after he got voted out and he did exit press, he claimed that like during the episode where I got voted out, that when Michael said, hey, we're going for Bradley and we have this idol, and if you guys guess wrong, Bradley's gone. Mm-hmm. That Bradley started sobbing and crying and all this kind of stuff. And I would offer this as Exhibit A as to Bradley's creative license, because like I watched. So first of all, you can ask any of the other people that were out there, and I feel pretty confident you're not going to find anybody who's going to tell you that they remember Bradley sobbing at that tribal council or any other. And then when you pressed Kellen on it, she was very measured in her response. She was like, well, I look back and his eyes got real big and there was a tear frozen in his eye. Like,
but it didn't fall.
It didn't fall. She's very careful with that language, right? it's a far cry from Bradley saying he was sobbing uncontrollably or whatever, however he put it, right? Now, but here's the part I don't get. Like, I don't know why he's like going to the mat on this one. Like, I'm not sure what it establishes. Like, to say, "Oh, I was crying so hard," and I don't even know what it means exactly. Like, how that helps for him, or I don't even know. I don't know why. I don't know why he felt the need to bring it up once again.
He's so passionate. That's how he's going to get back on. Like, he's crying for the show. He doesn't want the editors to forget.
So anyway, there's all these fictions around people crying, and I don't know. Like, that seems to be a thing for him. You know, like people crying in Survivor. But hey, whatever. It's, you know, like I said, he tells a good story, and sometimes if you need to draw out the details a little bit, and if you cross into the area of fiction, hey, who cares, right?
Yeah, I mean, and like we always, it's funny because everybody will always admit to at least some point, they're like, this is my side. Like, everybody always admits it to some point. So you know that some of the stuff, everybody's going to contradict each other. We had Kellen and Bradley first. So it's like, you know, they kind of supported each other's stories here. So now we're getting the other side of the spectrum.
See, was there somebody else to support that story?
Yeah, exactly.
You can find that one.
Unfortunately, James wasn't there at that tribal. Otherwise, because I know he wants to do this, and James wasn't there to say that Bradley was crying. But was there any way that you could have connected with the other side and said, "Guys, keep losing and keep voting out the Navidis because they're crazy over here"?
Yeah, they thought about it. After James got voted out, he said that they had a real serious conversation about maybe throwing like, so the challenge where I got voted out, where we were trying to throw the balls on top of that framework. And I just didn't get it done. That was on me. But James said that they thought about trying to throw that one and the subsequent, and he wishes that they had. We didn't really have the opportunity to get close enough to have that conversation. Boy, I wish they had.
Yeah, because the crazy thing is, if you look at the way that was set up, after Morgan goes home, there is no way Chris and Angela are ever working with Dom.
Right.
So you have at least one easy boot, probably two, and once you get the one, you have the numbers.
Yeah.
So it's like we really didn't get to know. Unfortunately, we didn't get to know Libby like at all, which was unfortunate. So we couldn't really grasp where she was. But it seemed like James put together the move to be like, guys, we need to get rid of Morgan. This is the best move for us.
Yeah.
And it was like if the four of them were clicking on all cylinders, they really could have just gotten rid of Chris, gotten rid of Angela, and then you're looking at, okay, you guys have the numbers, even if Donathan and Laurel decide they're going to work with Dom and Wendell.
Yeah. And the crazy thing about the game is, every day there are 100 different moves. So like we all think about the biggest, most glaring move that resulted in us getting voted out, right? Like unless you win. So I always think about like the vote where I was sent home, and originally I was protected and then I wasn't. We can talk about that more if you want, but like basically I think of that, but really there are 100 different moves. Like every day there are 100 different things that could change the course of the game. And there are a lot of players like Morgan, for example, I think is the kind of person who could win a game. Like she's got all the tools to win the game. And what's interesting about that vote is, and I think they showed it a little bit, but like, they were deciding between Wendell and Morgan.
Yeah. And
they ended up going with Morgan, and they could have gone with Wendell just like that. They go with Wendell, and the whole game, Wendell's out third, and who knows where Morgan ends up. Now I don't know if they would have swapped places or what, but like, that's how the game goes, right? Like on a whim, you could be out third or you could win the game. And not to take anything away from Wendell, like I think he played a great game and 100% deserving of a winner. But my point is, like, there are so many things that happen on every day that completely affect the outcome. And like there's this domino effect that's just massive. So, it ends in a lot of good players going home early. Like I think Morgan could have won. I think Stephanie Johnson could have won. I think, Michael, the list goes on and on, right? I think if we played the game, if the 20 of us played the game 20 times, I think you'd probably have 14 or 15 different winners.
Well, and what I think is so interesting about Survivor now is that it's now gotten to the point where the better players don't necessarily make it further because the really good players are actually going after the really good players early. Like Bradley and Kellen knew what they were doing when they were getting rid of you and Stephanie Johnson.
Yeah.
And when they get rid of James at one point, because they're sitting there and I remember Kellen says in her next interview, she's sitting there crying again. Here's crying again. But crying, talking to you because she's like, oh my God, I'm about to vote this guy out. And he's telling me about how he's done this. He's been applying for so long and he's doing,
It was your birthday the next day, right?
Yep.
all that stuff. And it's crazy because Bradley and Kellen also know, like, if we don't get rid of Brendan, we don't get rid of Michael, and we don't get rid of Stephanie, they can beat us in the end because of their stories, because of the way they're playing the game, because of the way they are with people. So I don't think, like, I think that there's some people like Dom who played such a great game. He could have went out early, and he really rode the roller coaster to get to the end.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't necessarily mean, though, if you get second or third place, that you're better than somebody who finished, 15th or 14th.
So here's the thing. I think you can't, these days it's hard to, I don't think you can back your way into a win or back your way into second place or whatever. Like, I just don't think that's, you've got to be a good player to get that far. But that doesn't mean that if you don't get that far, you're not a good player. So, there are a lot of people that played the game with me on 36 that were really good players and, I think have what it takes to win, and it just didn't, the ball didn't bounce their way. As far as knocking people out early, I came in knowing that there'd be a target on me, and pregame, like, I had producers telling me, like, look, man, you're going to be a target. Like, you got to figure something out. And I knew that. So my line right out of the gate, when I was talking to Michael or Stephanie Johnson or, whoever, Laurel, I'd be like, listen, out here, strong protects strong, right? Like, that's the way this has to work, because if you're that one, like, tall blade of grass, like, you're going to get chopped down immediately. So, so we have to protect each other. And let's do that until we get to, look, if we get to 5 people left, then we'll all look each other in the face and say, okay, where do we go from here, right? Like, I wasn't about to start making final 3 promises on day 1, because I think nobody takes you seriously when you do that. But, right, I don't think they should. But my line was like, look, you're strong, I'm strong. If we don't protect each other, one of us is going home real fast. And so we need to figure this out. And I basically told that story to a bunch of the Malolos, the ones who I thought were strong players, to say, like, we've got to look out for each other here. And I think that's the way you've got to play the game. If you feel like you kind of fall in that category.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, who invented, like, the meat shield thing? Because that hasn't always been a thing. But
it's more recent.
It's definitely more recent.
The first person I remember using those words, and I may be missing this one, but I remember Jeremy Collins talking about meat shields, and I don't know if he invented the term, but he played it really well. And in fact, before the game, like, he was kind of the guy I wanted to emulate. Like, I felt like he kind of laid out the blueprint for how you win when you come in with a target on your back.
And even more than that, I mean, just what we were just talking about, for somebody who was clearly better than half the cast who beat him the first time around, but you end up on the wrong side of the numbers, or one thing goes wrong, and there you go out at 11th or 10th or whatever Jeremy was. And then the next time he plays, he's like, I'm going to win this thing. And he goes out and wins it. And I think there's a lot of people on your cast who, if they were to play a second time and not have too many people from Ghost Island on their season, would do really, really well, because they can look at it now with the perspective of, like, I could have done better, or, like, how did I lose to whoever?
Yeah. And I think, look, I think you have to catch a break or a couple, if you don't, like, it's really hard to win. So the person who wins, I think, typically is going to be the person who catches a break or two and is really good. You can't, I don't want to name names, but there are players in the past that, like, kind of just back their way into it. I don't think you can do that anymore. You've got to be a good player. And so the people that were there at the end in our season, I don't think there wouldn't have been any shame in any of them winning. But they all caught breaks, that's for sure, And so it doesn't take away from the fact that they played really, really good games. But, there are other people, I think, that, look, I mean, you look at Michael, right? I think we can all agree he's a really good player. I think he's got kind of all phases of the game, and he had a hard time catching a break, right? So that's the way it goes, right? I mean, that's part of Survivor.
I know you went early enough that I doubt you got tired, but it seemed like towards the end, Jenna, Michael kept fighting, but it seemed like Jenna and, like, Libby was just so frustrated. And it seemed like everybody's just so annoyed that it was like, no matter what we do, the stupid Navides won't break up. So, like, I feel like Jenna at her tribal, when she finally went home, was just like, I really don't care. Like, I just get me out of here.
I mean, I haven't talked to her about that specifically. I think like the odd, I mean, James calculated the odds of like it panning out with a Malolo minority in every case possible. And it's like, it's crazy. It's like 4% odds or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think it was more that, and not even like they won't break up, but it was more like, how can this be that every time we have a swap or a whatever, like even the weird kind of like, you know, let's break it into 2 tribals. And then, you know, there's a majority for both on both sides of the tribal for, I guess, both Jenna and Michael. Like, I mean, what are the odds, right? So I think it was almost like you throw up your hands like, this seems impossible, you know, like how can you lose this many hands of cards in a row? And, you know, Malolo.
You guys hold on to the fact that it was a Malolo that in the end is the one who chose the winner. Cause that's something, I mean, that's going to go down in history. That's kind of cool. Yeah,
it is kind of cool. I mean, I like being a part of a season where history was made. I don't know that I wear it as a badge of pride or anything like that Malolo broke the tie. I do think, you know, I always think about how the game might have gone differently, and like on the night that I was, you know, we all think this, right? We're all delusional, and we think, oh, if only this one thing, like I would have voted to the end, and who knows, man? Like I might have been voted out the next time, but on the night that I was voted out, you know, I really believed strongly it was going to be me, and Michael had a hard time believing it was going to be either one of us, either one of the guys, and he just felt like he gets the game, and he knows that I mean his line was basically like, look, even though they're content to just vote us off one by one, you never want to go to tribal council. Yeah. Right. So because weird things can happen, maybe somebody has an idol, some weird things happen, right? So they're not going to vote out one of the guys yet because they just don't want to go to tribal council. And I didn't think that was the case. I thought they were going to go for one of the 2 of us. And in fact, I thought it was going to be me. So when Michael got up there and said, and so I had been working on Michael all day to say, hey, dude, you got to play this thing on me. Because he was thinking I'm playing it on Stephanie. I said, I really think it's going to be me. Like, you got to play this thing on me. So when he got up and he said, okay, I'm playing it for myself and Brendan, I knew he was, you know, when Jeff said, well, it's only good for one, he was going to say Brendan. But he was watching, so I'm watching Michael. Michael's watching Bradley, you know, and I've got bated breath, like, oh, please. And then, you know, when Bradley, to Bradley's credit, didn't give a big response, you know, nor did any of the other Navidis. You know, he second guessed and he went with Johnson. So, and then I knew I was cooked. Like before the first vote came up, I just knew.
Did you know he was going to do this double idol thing, or was that a complete surprise?
No, so that he came up with on his own. Like I think he came up with it like a half hour before we got out there. So, you know, that was a great move. Because the plan was, so actually I want to talk about this because I've heard you say, and I think Alexa, you agreed that we made a mistake in singling out Bradley.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk this through because I'm not sure I agree with you.
Okay.
So here's the deal. So in that situation, if we were to have said, okay, guys, okay, Navidis, we're voting for one of you, so you better defect and cast your vote for somebody other than the person you all agreed on, right? Anybody but the person you all agreed on. The problem is that what this means is we need to convince 2 of them, not one of them.
Yeah.
Right? So we would have had to get both Seabass and Chelsea in that case, or Seabass and Kellen, or whatever, right? Some combination of them. And we felt like the likelihood of swaying 2 of them to vote against their block was really low. Because if you only get one, you've got to tell them who to vote for, right? You can't just say vote for. We're voting for
the live tribal.
They're gonna be like, well, who do I vote for?
Yeah.
So then, so let's say Seabass gets up and he says, okay, all right, I'm willing to go with you guys. Who should I vote for? And I whisper in Seabass's ear. He's just gonna go then tell the Navidis, yeah, they're gonna go vote for for
That's
Helen.
true.
Right?
So you're preventing the live tribal. I get that. That's
yeah. So and then the other issue is like, why didn't we approach them prior, right? Because that would have been the other play. Would have been to try to get a hold of Seabass or Chelsea or some combination of them before the tribal council, and say, hey, listen, we have this idol. Here's what we're gonna do. If you guys guess wrong, you're screwed. Like that's how this works, right? And then we're gonna pick you up. We're going after you first, right? Like we could have played that game, but the problem is that it doesn't make sense, right? Like we had a 1 in 4 chance of getting it right. If they're playing the odds, they stick together. They do what they did. They make the smart play. So what we hope to do is fluster them, right? Because we figured if we came to them hours before tribal, they would then powwow, they'd put their heads together, and they think like, this doesn't make sense. If we just stick together, we're good. You know, we got a 1 in 4 chance of them guessing right, but we're willing to bank on that 1 in 4. So, so we made like the conscious decision, Michael and I did, that we're not going to talk about it before, you know, before tribal. We're just going to try to like throw it out there and hope to freak them out. And we kind of expected it wasn't going to work. And then when it didn't work, we were hoping that we'd guess right on the idol. Now, the other play for me would have been to go with the Navidi 5, right? To jump. But that play didn't make any sense for me in the long run, because if I had jumped from my 4, now all of a sudden, like I'm like public enemy number 1 among the remaining 3. So like, let's say that I jump with those guys and they say, hey, let's go get Michael, and we get Michael. Now I'm dead to Stephanie and Jenna, no matter what happens. And when my Malolos on the other side figure out what I did, I'm dead to them too. Well, so that when I make it to the merge, I'm in a world of trouble. And so I feel like the game, and this is the crux of Survivor, you've got to figure out, like, the balancing act is you're playing for tomorrow and you're playing for the end. And if you play too much for tomorrow, you know, you never get to the end. And if you play too much for the end, maybe you don't see tomorrow. So that's what makes Survivor hard, in my opinion. That and not eating. That's what makes Survivor hard, right? So for me, it was like, rather than saying, you know what, I'm gonna on the fly go over to the Navidis and tell them, hey, let's just work together and guarantee myself 3 more days. I knew I'd be guaranteeing myself 3 more days, and probably only 3 more days, because I didn't think we were going to merge at what would have been 17, right? Yeah. So, and I thought, you know, I'm going to go with them, and then I'm next. And if it's not me, it's Stephanie, and then it's me, right? Yeah. So, like, I'm not here to play for 16th place or 15th place or 3rd place. Like, I'm here to play to win, right? So my thought was, let's go big, let's gamble big on the 1 in 4, because if we get it right, and we almost got it right, like we're so close to getting it right. If we get it right, the whole game changes, because then we go back to camp and it's 4-4, and I'm telling you, one of those 4 we're gonna break. Like, they would have come to us because the 4 of us, we were just like feeling all badass. We're like, we'll go to Rocks, I don't care. And in reality, we, you know, it's funny because my vote was the first one where nobody went to Ghost Island for the vote. Yeah. Right. So for the first 3 votes, somebody was at Ghost Island for the vote. For mine, nobody was. But before the challenge, we figured, okay, chances are, if somebody goes to Ghost Island, it's going to be one of them, because there's more of them than there are of us. Now we're 4-4. We'll just go to Rocks and we'll dare them, right? And we're ready to do that, which would have been exciting. Or it would have been one of us, and then we have 3. So if it's 5 of them and 3 of us, now we got a 1 in 3 chance of guessing right, not a 1 in 4 chance of guessing right. So any way you cut it, if the game went in the 4th vote like it did the first 3, and somebody stays at Ghost Island, we're better off. So when nobody went to Ghost Island, we were a little bit disappointed at that tournament.
I think on our predictions, we had assumed that somebody was going to go to Ghost Island. And when that happened, if it is one of the Navidis, you guys were never going to break. And I know Bradley has said it numerous times. He never really trusted Chelsea. Like, he thought, I mean, Chelsea ends up getting him booted anyway. So I think that Chelsea was probably ready to just be like, all right, I'm out of here. And you've mentioned Chelsea and Seabass the most as the 2 that you could probably play. I mean, you haven't even said Dez's name this entire podcast. So,
well, Dez was holding strong. You know, I mean, she was holding strong with or it seemed that way to us anyway.
And that's why Kellen, she was saying the whole time, like, I never believed them when they said Dez was trying to vote me out, because I never thought Dez would ever try to vote me out of the game. But it's funny because I love doing this number thing right here. I think this is great, because you sit there and you're like, I don't want to be the one who flips over there, because I'm not playing for 15th, I'm not playing for 16th. But was there any part of you that was like, with what's going on at the other tribe, if we keep losing, because I think you guys were the weaker tribe, and it was clearer because they had Chris, they had Dom, they had Laurel, they had some of the bigger people. And maybe it wasn't as clear out on the island. Maybe I mean, you did have Michael and you did have you. So I don't know, but was there any part of you that was like, with what's going on over there, if they're going to keep getting rid of the Navidis, it's not going to be like they can just get rid of me at any point. Like, you almost would have been like a middle player at some point had that happen.
Yeah. I you know, in the moment, I thought, so the day I went home, I thought, if I jump now, I can probably assure myself 3 more days, and then I will be the next to go.
Mhm.
That was kind of my strong suspicion. And I think probably I would have been the next to go. It was Stephanie. It would have either been Stephanie or me.
Right.
I think it probably would have been me. The one play that I regret, because you think about this, I think about it every day, and that's the thing that I should have done that I didn't do, is I should have gone to the Navides and bluffed it and just said, hey, listen, I'm ready to jump. Who are you voting for?
Yeah.
Now, the risk there is they give me misinformation, and if they're smart, they would have given me misinformation. And they would have told me to vote for somebody other than, I don't know. Who knows, right? But I should have at least given that a shot, I think, at least to create a little bit of uncertainty. And so I wish I had done that. I don't wish I had done that and then voted with them. I wish I had gone to my Navidi, the other three, and said, hey, look, here's the plan. I'm going to go to them and make it look like I'm going to defect. And I'm going to see if I can get a name out of them.
See, now, I know you and Bradley had a contentious relationship out there. Was there any way that you could have gotten Jenna to maybe be your insider and be like, Jenna, just tell them you're ready to flip over? And
yeah, so we tried.
Yeah, the whole Jenna and Sebastian thing.
We tried, and there again, in retrospect, that would have been what you just said would have been a better play. What we tried to do is we tried to get Jenna to sway Sebastian to come to us. And the thought being, the argument being look, Bradley does not want to go to the end with strong players. He doesn't want to have to contend with you at the end, whether or not that was true. Just lay that on him, and so come with us, and you'll be one of us. And it, particularly because they had a relationship kind of blossoming at that point. So that was the play. I think what we should have done is exactly what you said. We didn't.
Was Sebastian interested at all? Did any of you guys have any relationship with him, or is she really the only in?
I mean, we were all friendly with him. So that's the thing. We were all, on the surface, we were all friendly out there. It wasn't an openly contentious relationship among anyone. Bradley and I, even out there, we tried to keep it, we tried to keep it civil. And we were friendly with everybody else. We really were. I mean, I think they probably said mean things about us behind our backs, but to our face, I mean, it was all very friendly. So I think the relationships were fine, but they wouldn't split up. They kept it really tight. They would circle the wagons.
Even socially, just, during your downtime?
Yeah. They would, if they ever went off, it would be the two of them. The only time I had a conversation once solo with Kellen, and it was the day I got voted out. And that's, the conversation we all talk about where it's I kind of had this heart to heart, and I told her the next day was my birthday, and I really wanted to be on my birthday. And I knew I was on the wrong side of numbers, but if I could just hang around for a little while longer. And that's when she, kind of teared up and turned away quickly. And, what's interesting is I didn't know, I thought she had not caught me catch her crying. Right. But we got to tribal council, and Michael was trying to get my attention. So I told him, I ran to Michael after that conversation. I'm like, Michael, I'm telling you, man, it's not Stephanie. You got to play this thing on me. You got to play this on me. I was paranoid. And so then we got to tribal council, and this is an hour later, because I think he had to do an interview or I did or something. So there was a little time away, and we're at tribal council, and he's trying to tell me something, and I couldn't tell what it was, but there was something he was urgently trying to tell me. Now, in retrospect, after the fact, he told me, when we found the James idol, it came with two parchments, right? One that said this is the standard immunity idol. The other one gave the history of the James idol in it, but the first line was this is the official James idol. So we're sweet, we have two parchments. We're going to hold on to two. We're going to find a way to leverage this into two, make it look like we have two down the road. So I had one of the two, and in reality, all he was trying to do is get my attention so he could get the parchment from me. But I thought he was trying to tell me he had new information. So I'm thinking in my head, okay, did Kellen catch me catching her crying? And now they changed it. Does he know something I don't that happened in the last hour? What's going on? So at the end of that tribal council and during the tribal council, what you didn't see is Jeff's hey, Brendan, are you worried? And I laid it out. I'm like, Jeff, they're making it look like it's Stephanie Johnson, and it's me. That's what's happening here. I said, I was it's explicit.
Oh my gosh, this is so frustrating.
Yeah. I'm it's me, I'm telling you. And I hope that was going to make the edit. It didn't, whatever. But, and so after I said my piece and everything, Michael, after all that, leans over to me, right before it's time for him to go up and play the idol, and says, I think it's Stephanie. And so what's going on in my head is, okay, he's heard me all day, and he's heard me at this tribal council. Maybe he knows something I don't. So I was kind of and you see it on the edit, I'm kind of okay, all right, man, I hope you're right. But despite that, he got up and he said my name, and because he wanted to see the reaction, and then the rest is history. But
Yeah.
that's how it went.
Does Michael talk to you about this after the fact?
Yeah. So first of all, Michael is, in addition to being a great Survivor player, he's a stand-up guy, and so like we talked, when the game was over, it was, I don't know, a day or two after everybody had gotten home, and we talked on the phone, and he was like, man, I'm so sorry. Like I messed up your game. And the reality was, and I said it to him at the time, and I meant it, and I meant it then, I mean it now. Like I was never, not even for a second, mad about it, because I knew he was trying to make a play that was going to help him and me. Like he wasn't trying to screw me over. He made the wrong call. But like, there's so much information flying around out there that, it's going to happen, right? Like we all have the wrong gut instinct at times and make the wrong call. So I was disappointed that I was out for sure, but like I was never mad about it. And he knows that. I mean, like, and look, I'm out because of that, but I'm out for 100 other reasons, right? Had I been able to stick that last ball up on the framework, we would have won that challenge, right? So that's all I mean. Like, there's a million things, and those are the obvious things. There are a million other things that could have led to me going much farther in the game, and so, or getting voted out first, right? So it's never any one thing, and that's the way the game goes.
Yeah. So
at the end of the day, what did you do on your birthday?
So here, I'm gonna walk over here because I got to plug my computer in before it dies. So here's the crazy thing. So I got voted out. Now I had lost a lot of weight. I had lost 13 pounds in 12 days. Wow. Which for me is a lot. And I came in kind of lean to begin with. Sorry, you can't see my face right now. I came in kind of lean to begin with. Sorry, I'll be back with you. So I was in pretty rough shape by the end. Like I remember when I got voted out, so before each tribal council, they want to make sure you're not going to die out there. So I went and had a visit with Dr. Joe, and on my way, I had been like, there's a staging area where you're waiting to meet with Dr. Joe. So I was laying down, I stood up and I rounded the corner and I just, boom, hit the ground. Like, fell down.
Oh my God.
Like out, right? Just for a second. And I got back up. And like, whenever I went to go see Dr.
You were
Joe,
puking, you're falling. This is tough.
So every time I saw Dr. Joe, I was like, as a matter of course, I was like, I'm good, man. I'm good. No problems. Cause like my biggest fear was getting pulled, or, I just never wanted to raise any red flags. But this time I said, Dr. Joe, I was like, hey, Dr. Joe, I'm falling down a lot. Like by day 6, every time I stood up, like my calves would cramp, like that last challenge where I was trying to throw the balls up on the framework, like I was dizzy, like I was trying to stay upright, like I was in a bad way. And I remember Dr. Joe saying to me, he's like, all right, so here's what you got to do. Just make sure when you get up fast, don't be standing over the fire. I was like, okay. He's like, off you go. And like, that's, I mean,
oh my God.
You idea, like they don't,
great advice.
They don't baby anybody out there. Like it's, it's Survivor, right? So I was in rough shape, and, like I was thinking slowly, I was talking slowly, the whole thing. So you get voted out, and then you do your like last minute confessional where, as the credits are rolling, that, what you see then. And I was struggling to like come up with words and names and everything. And then I got on the boat to go to Ponderosa. And I remember they asked me what I wanted to eat. And I was like, well, what do you have? And they're like, we have everything. And so I ordered this big meal. So I knew I had a pizza waiting and a bacon cheeseburger and fries and a milkshake and all this stuff waiting for me when I got there. And I hadn't eaten, in a while. And so I was like really excited about it. And they had candy, like they had Hershey's, like chocolate on the, like Hershey's Kisses on the boat. Mm-hmm. And a bag of them. They're like, hey, you want it? And I remember, as twisted as this is, like, I didn't want to spoil my dinner. I was starving, like literally starving. But I wanted this meal to be the greatest thing I'd ever experienced. So I'm like, I don't want to spoil my dinner. So I had like 2 of them, right? Mm-hmm. Like 2 Hershey Kisses. And it was like I was on crack. Like, like Dr. Liza was on the boat, and one of the other people that were, was there. And I was like, I'm talking a mile a minute, like I'm talking right now, for 45 minutes straight, just, the whole time. Mm. Like it was like I was on speed, and it was amazing what a few calories, a little bit of sugar will do. And so then, you get to Ponderosa, and it's wild. Like I didn't I had seen the Ponderosa videos, and so I knew how great it was for the people that made the jury. Like, yeah, I'd seen all those videos, but I kind of had this sense that maybe we were kind of like the second class citizens.
Yeah.
Because pregame, we're at Ponderosa, we're on that island, but we're in tents, like these one-person tents. And I figured maybe I'm going to go back and be in a tent, and I don't know, like no frills. And I couldn't have been more wrong. Like, they treated us so well. And so, like, I got back there and it was like everything I wanted to eat or drink or do or whatever. Like, it was like they treated us incredibly well. And so it takes a little bit of the sting out of it. Obviously, I mean, I think if you asked anybody out there, they would have traded every day of Ponderosa and the trip for one more day in the game. But they, Survivor definitely treats you well once you get voted out.
I think it's funny that they still don't show the pre-jury Ponderosa, because I feel like what's happened recently is with social media and everything, people have such an easy time keeping in contact. Like, there are things that are like, Stephanie Johnson should play again, Brendan should play again, Bradley should play again, James should play again, like all these people. And it's like, I always say now, because people are like, the jury's too big or the merge happens too soon. I'm like, they want to milk it. Like, they get these people on the show once. They want to get every single thing out of them that I feel like they can. And I'm kind of surprised that we haven't gotten a pre-jury Ponderosa yet, because it's like, if you're going to have Stephanie Gonzalez go out there, I mean, I talked to Stephanie Gonzalez for 5 minutes and I was like, of course she was going to get cast on the show. Like, why wouldn't she be on the show? So when you're talking to her, it's like, why not give her more than just her 45 minutes? Give her another like 6-minute video. I mean, just the instant reaction of being the first person voted out of the game would be amazing to see.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And everybody that was out there with me were like really interesting in their own ways. And like, yeah, you just said it about Gonzo and like Jacob's. I mean, there's a reason Jacob got whatever 15 confessionals in like a 2-hour period or whatever it was. Like, he's wild in a really good way. Like, he's really interesting. I mean, I go down the list. Like Morgan, Morgan is one of the most expressive, like over the top communicators you'll ever, like in the best way. Like, she's like, you can't help wanting to talk to her and like watch her speak. Stephanie Johnson's a huge personality. Bradley, like, and so same deal, right? So yeah, I think it would have been really interesting. And I think interesting to see how everybody kind of interacts with each other, right? Because like, all these people vote each other out, and some people are bent out of shape, other people are in a good mood, and like, I don't know, it's interesting. The dynamics out there are really interesting, and I think probably from season to season, like, I think my sense from talking to people is there have been some seasons where the pre-jury or the jury or whatever, like, it's super contentious and they're not happy with each other, and so the vibe is real kind of angry. There's sometimes where the vibe's like crazy and fun, and like, we were kind of more on the crazy fun side. And so, yeah, I think it would have been, I think there's a lot they could have, I mean, there's a lot they couldn't show, but there's a lot they could have showed that would have been fun to watch.
Yeah. And maybe they don't want to show your whole trip to Australia or anything, but just everything else. But now we have to, so then Bradley gets voted out. He's your last member. He's going to be joining on this pre-jury trip. So Bradley says that you guys like grilled him when it happened. Okay. What's the truth here, Brendan? Let's hear it.
Not at all.
You guys just cold shouldered him.
Now I'm gonna be totally honest. When he got voted out, we're waiting for the last jury member or the last pre-jury member, because the 7 of us are going to go on this trip together. We had been told, okay, it's just 7 and you're going to go on this trip together. So we're like, all right, who's it going to be? And we're taking bets. It's kind of like this fun game that you play, because if you're pre-jury, you don't know who it's going to be until they get there. Right? Like, once it's the jury, they know, they watch the person get voted out. Yeah. We don't know. Right. So we're sitting there waiting and wondering, and like the handlers at Ponderosa, they'll give hints, like, it's fun. Right. So there's all this anticipation. So with Bradley, the stakes are high because he's the last one. So it's like, okay, and we had a really good dynamic. Like, everybody got, kind of found a way to get along really well. And so like, who's the last person going to be? And the God's honest truth, like, we were all like, oh, anybody but Bradley. Because now to be fair, Gonzo had never met him. Morgan actually had no problem with him. Morgan's like, oh, I played with him. He seems cool, like, whatever.
I feel like Morgan could like anybody.
Yeah, like, and I think Morgan was with him when, yes, that's the biggest part of it. Morgan, I think, is just a positive person and can like everybody. To her credit, she was with him when everything was going great for Navidi, So I think it's easier to have a fun. And I remember Bradley talking, or maybe Kellen talking about that like, in the beginning with Navidi, like, everything's fun. Like, they're winning and their camp's beautiful and everything's great. So it's maybe a different experience. But And Jacob didn't really know much of Bradley, only what we had told him. But Johnson and I, and actually James. So really, it was okay. To be fair, it was Johnson and me being like, "Oh boy, here he comes! This guy. Wait till you can load this guy." And so we had everybody hyped up like anybody but Bradley, because to me, like, I just felt like there was so much negative energy there, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm really glad that it was Bradley in retrospect, because I wouldn't have gotten to know him otherwise. And as much as we don't see eye to eye in certain ways, like we, he's a friend of mine, and to put it on the record, like, he's a very funny guy. He, all the nice things that Kellen says about him are mostly true. And he's been and above all things, he's been nice to my kids, which is a big deal. So I'll forgive just about anything else. But like, he and I didn't see eye to eye out on the island. So I'm like, this guy, like, do I really want to travel with this guy all this time? And I think Bradley would admit, if he were on right now, he'd say, like, he didn't have the best attitude, at Ponderosa and on the trip to start, because he felt like we all did, that we really just wanted to still be out there, and that it wasn't our time yet. So, and he felt like all his people were still out on the island, right? So, and he would remind us of that all the time. But he came off, and he, to his credit, like, he was in a good mood, or he tried to put it on, at least for our benefit. That first night, like, we stayed up all night with him, I think. We stayed up all night with him, and just having a good time, and he did a good job of keeping the mood kind of where we wanted it. But then I think he had a hard time as the days went on, and we all did at times, right? But so it was, and when he goes into that dark space, he just starts talking about everybody else. And so when that happened, I heard him claim that, like, we just grilled him when he got there, and it just didn't happen. Now, I will say this, like, when he would be mean about people and say nasty things about people behind their back, like, we'd call him on it. But he had said he kind of, people hadn't typically called him on that sort of thing in his life, and maybe he needed that. And so we did. And, and, I don't know. I have a hard time sitting on my hands when I feel like somebody's getting real nasty. And so every now and again, and I think he would admit this, he kind of steps a little bit over the line where it goes from being funny to being nasty. And so we'd talk about it when that happened, but
we'd have a discussion.
No, I mean, but having said all that, I don't mean to make it sound like he was the only one that was in a bad headspace at the time. I think anyone who played Survivor who gets voted out, I mean, almost anyone who really wants to play and win, goes into a kind of a negative space every now and again. Yeah. And maybe this is to his credit, I don't know, like, he just wouldn't hide it, right? I mean, maybe we all just hid it better. So, there it is.
And it's funny because, like, I know he had said to me, he's like, you gotta remember, I'm coming from, I voted out, like, I was the reason Brendan and Stephanie are gone. They're the two biggest fans, probably. I mean, Jacob was huge, but he didn't really know Jacob. But he's like, Brendan and Johnson are like the two biggest fans, and I voted them out and, like, ruined it. And now I have to go hang out with them for, like, the next 20 days or whatever it is. And he's like, I think he was terrified going there, because it's like, what's going to happen? I only know Morgan, or I only got along really with Morgan. The other two people that are over there don't like me at all. I'm sure James didn't hear great things. I mean, James just went home because of Kellen. So yeah. I can't imagine he was in a great place. And it was freshest for him coming into that, which is like.
Yeah. That was hard for him. To the first point, like, I think what he didn't realize, and talking about self-fulfilling prophecies, like, I think what he didn't realize is he was dealing with a lot of players who, like, my attitude was, and I think I can speak for most of the other people that were pre-jury Ponderosa. My attitude was, like, these people are supposed to vote me out. Like, my job is to vote them out. Their job is to vote me out. That's what they're supposed to do, right? Mm-hmm. If they think I can beat them, they're supposed to vote me out. So I was never mad for having been voted out. Like, that's how the game works. In the same way that, like I was, again, there's a big difference between being disappointed in an outcome and disappointed that I didn't figure out a way to get to the end, and being mad at the people who voted me out. Like, that's the point of the game for them, right? Is to vote me out. So I wasn't mad about it. I don't think Stephanie Johnson was mad about it. I think we were all bitterly disappointed at times. and Morgan wasn't mad about, it was like that type of deal. So I think he came in expecting something that wasn't there. And so, when you go into expecting something, you see it. And I don't know. I didn't feel like it was there again. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I was being, I don't know. Maybe I was being mean and I just didn't see it.
Yeah. So I want to talk about you and Stephanie Johnson, because the two of you and Michael looked very close out there, but it looked like you and Stephanie Johnson seemed like you had started to kind of forge something we didn't see completely. Yeah. But so what was your relationship like with her the whole time?
Well, things switched like dramatically, right? So I was in this 5-person alliance that I talked about before with Jenna, Stephanie, Michael, and Libby. But it's interesting, like when I had that conversation that I told you about with the producers after the second vote out, where I'm like, well, Malolo's 0-2, but I'm 2-0. And then they're like, well, what's next? What are you gonna do next? And I still felt nervous I kind of felt like with Stephanie Johnson, I felt like I got to get her before she gets me. And so Michael and I had talked about going for Stephanie next. And despite the fact that she was really strong, and she is a strong, physically strong person. And so that was kind of the plan, was like, we're going after, we're going to split up this Stephanie Jenna pair finally. We didn't do it in the first 2 votes. We're going to do it now. And they won't see it coming, and we'll bring in James and Laurel and all them, and they'll have no problem doing it. Donathan, like, this will be easy. And we'll tell everybody but Jenna, and this will be like cake, no problems. And then we'll come back to camp one more time where everybody's happy, kumbaya, and yeah, I'm the leader, but nobody's holding it against me just yet. Like, that was my plan, right? So then we do the swap, and I go from she's in my crosshairs to like, now we're tight, right?
Yeah.
Now we were tight, like it was kind of Michael and me. So like there was this montage on the show where you see us all searching for idols, and it kind of made it look like we were all searching together, like the 4 of us. The reality is we did the swap. We basically got back from the swap. We welcomed our new friends in. And then Michael and I are like, oh, we got to find an idol now, And so, and there's like a secret scene where like on the CBS All Access or something, where I'm talking about like, there's going to come a day where I need to go searching for idols, and I don't care if people know that I'm doing it. Now is not that day, but that day's coming. Well, that day came, right? And I'm like, we got to find this idol, buddy. And we agreed. So we went like scurrying around. Now, meanwhile, Stephanie and Jenna, I think, were doing the same thing. Michael and I found the idol, I would guess, in 30 minutes or less. Now, bear in mind, like, you're always kind of looking. Yeah. So like if you're going to go get water and you notice there's like a hollowed out tree, you reach in the tree real fast. Like you do little things to look. So I had looked in the obvious places. Michael had looked in the obvious places. So when I say it took us 30 minutes, it took us 30 minutes after we had ruled out like the most obvious places.
Yeah.
But we found it right away. And for the 3 days after, I went with Stephanie Johnson probably no less than 3 or 4 times looking for the idol where I'd be the lookout. Oh. She's like, and I felt bad because she's like reaching her hand into like, and it comes out with like covered in ants and stuff like that. I know where the idol is, and I'm just like, whatever. So, but yeah, Stephanie, so it was Michael and I were the closest, and we kind of felt like, okay, there's probably going to come a day pretty soon where we need to play this idol for the 4 of us. Yeah. Because these 5 aren't going to let us in. They're not breaking up, and they're just going to pick us off. So we got to play it for the 4 of us. But we didn't know how the game was going to pan out. So we're like, we'll let them know when we need to let them know. So there's this scene where you see Michael walk up to the 3 of us on the beach, and he's like, hey, look what I just found. And I, pretended to look surprised. And that was like, literally, that was like 30 minutes before tribal council. It was like right before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was right before. And so we said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We made this plan that Michael and I had already made. Yeah. Having said that though, like Steph and I always woke up I was up all night, all the time. And so I woke up with the sun, like I was praying for the sun to come up because I just never slept anyway. So when the sun would come up, I'd, watch the sun come up over the horizon, and Stephanie would always do the same. And so we do that together. And like in certain ways, we're super different. Like she's into like chakras and Reiki. Words I don't even know what they mean. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm me. So we're really different in certain ways, but we're very similar in other ways. And that we both have kids, and there weren't many of us out there, right? She was the only one that I played with that had a kid. And when it comes to our kids, we have similar values and that kind of stuff. So So yeah, we really hit it off. So she went from being on day 6, the person that I wanted to vote out next, to over the next 6 days, one of the people that I was closest with in the game.
Yeah, it's really funny how all that goes down. And it's funny because like as we're watching it, it's like, oh, I want to ask you about this edit because like we're watching, it's like Brendan and Stephanie are gonna find a way to do this. Like we're being told Brendan, Stephanie, and Michael are like the heroes here. Like I assumed at that tribal, I still couldn't believe it was between you and Bradley because I was like, it has to be Jenna who goes home. We've seen the least from her. Right. Brendan, Stephanie, and Michael are going endgame. Like they're going to be here. They're going to somehow overthrow these mean people on Navidi. At least from the edit, that's what we were getting.
Yeah, totally.
And,
it was. Yeah, no. I mean, that's the edit that's what they were building to. And I guess I don't know. I mean, they threw everybody off, but and that's what I had envisioned in my head, right? Like when we went into the vote where I was voted out, like I had this grand vision of, we're going to guess right, and Bradley's going to go. And this will be like one of those epic tribal councils that people talk about because we had this 1-in-4 shot. Michael's going to make this great play. We're going to be high-fiving, and they're going to be looking at each other like, oh, no, like that's it, right? And the whole game is going to change, and like, and the balance of power in the not just in our tribe, but in the game from Navidi to Malolo, like this will mark the kind of the shift. And of course, it didn't work out that way. So, but yeah, the edit sure made it look like it was going to work out that way. So
we were waiting for Malolo to win with the way that it was just built that way.
Yeah. And the like I said, we've talked about this before, but the way that Navidi's played it was smart and effective, right? So yeah, maybe it was boring TV, but I don't hold it against Bradley or Kellen or Chelsea or Des or Seabass that they stuck together because it worked for them.
And it's really crazy because at that point when you go home, we don't know Chelsea at all. Bradley has spoken for 5 minutes. We don't really know Seabass at all, and we don't know Des at all. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, somehow this is going to happen. And then when it didn't happen with you, I was like, okay, but Stephanie Johnson's still going to be okay. And then Stephanie Johnson goes the week after, and I was like, okay, well, the Malolos are still going to find a way. They still have Michael, they still have James, they still have Libby.
Right.
We've heard, and then James goes next, and I was like, what is going on? And like, how do you feel?
I think the James one was the big
that was. I literally texted Alexa and I said, "This is no longer fun," because it was just like, okay, what am I watching though? And how do you feel being a part of it and knowing who's going to go home in the order it's going to go as you're watching it? Like, how did you feel it represented everything that was really going on and everything?
Yeah, so putting to the side little stuff like that first episode where whatever, like it looked like it was going to be 2 people and it was maybe. Putting aside little stuff like that, if we're just talking about the trajectory of the show, like on a grander scale, I mean, I knew like that thing. I knew how it panned out, right? I knew how it was going to go. So I guess it's a different perspective. Like I'm not surprised by it because I knew that that's what was going to happen. And I will say this: I felt like so the 2 highest rated episodes before the finale were the one after I got voted out and the one after Bradley got voted out. Now, the one after Bradley got voted out was also the crazy Chris vote out.
Yeah, it was the best episode of the show.
So awesome. And the thing was, I didn't really know too many details. I knew roughly what was going to happen, but like watching that was so much fun because, I wasn't there for any of that. So you hear things, but I didn't really know how it was all going to go. So watching that was so cool. But anyway, I like to think that things were more exciting when they were building this arc that looked like it was going to be this great turnaround. And then when it wasn't, and I thought that things kind of leveled off for a while, right? So I'll take credit as part of the pre-merge as hitting the ratings hard, and then things sort of flattened out.
The biggest problem was once Bradley went home, they hadn't set up it was like, okay, Chris versus Dom. But then Chris went the next episode and it was like, what's our next storyline? Like, we actually don't know what our storyline is because everybody we've gotten to know, other than like Wendell, Dom, and Kellen and Michael, are out of the game. Nobody's left.
Yeah. And I think, look, I mean, and this speaks to the fact that the game, some people think the game's rigged and that it's engineered. The reality is, if the producers wanted to engineer the results, it wouldn't have gone the way it did, in my opinion, right? Like the story would have gone a different way, but that's the way it goes, right? So sometimes you have big characters that get voted out early, You have outcomes that they don't, they're rooting against certain outcomes. And
There's
I mean,
nothing they
look at
can
it this way, okay, so my vote out, and this has nothing to do with producers liking Bradley or me better, but it would have made a more exciting back half if Bradley were the one to go instead of me, because then you would have had this superpower Malolo versus Navidi thing going into the post merge. Instead, things just kept panning out in this way that was kind of like, it made it hard to kind of juice it up. So the outcome is what it is, and they just have to make the best of what happens out there. And sometimes things pan out beautifully for production, and things work out like in the most compelling and exciting way, and sometimes they don't. And I think within a season that happens, right? There are ebbs and flows, and
right.
That's the organic nature of the show.
You reminded me. So you you hear about the Sox on TV, you hear about the whole Chris thing on TV. How was hearing about the tie? Like, what was going through your head when you hear there's a tie? That's crazy.
So what was cool about that is, I felt like our season was one that was historic in that it was a new concept. And I think probably one that they could revisit down the road if they want to, but a novel concept that I think at times worked really well. And then to be a part of, you have 36 seasons and there's never been a tie, to know that there's going to be a tie. So on the night of the finale, the jury was out on stage in the live show, and the pre-jury, we were like backstage, like right behind this curtain about to walk out. And when Jeff basically said, like, now I'm going to read the votes, like, I got goosebumps, and I kind of had a sense of what was going on. Like, and I still got goosebumps hearing it, watching. I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Like, so being a part of that, being a part of a season where that happened was, I don't know, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. What was the crowd like?
The crowd was good. It was, I mean, I gotta be honest, it's a little bit of a blur, right? Like when you're on that stage, it all just kind of like, all kind of washes over you, and you're looking at, I don't know, looking at Jeff, and and I don't know, the whole thing is a blur, but the crowd was pretty excited. I don't know. I mean, it was my first one, right? So I don't know how it compares to other ones, but yeah, it was, it felt electric in there. It really did.
Yeah, I won't lie. I think I like blacked out when he said he's gonna read the votes. I was like, what? Where did I go?
Out.
Like, you just like have that moment. You're like, no way, and like it really did redeem what I thought was kind of like a lackluster post merge. It really did redeem that, because like I want to. So you talked a lot about Laurel, but how about somebody like Donathan, who seemed like he was always just trying to blow the game up, but never was doing it. You spent 6 days with him.
Yeah.
What was your read on Donathan, and also as a competitor, what was it like that first challenge? Were you losing your mind?
So Donathan, I never saw the Donathan of the back half of the game in the first half of the game. So in other words, like in the first 6 days, he was very, like at every turn, he was very self-deprecating. He was always kind of like, hey guys, I know that I'm the weakest one here. I know I'm probably going home. I know, like there was none of the, like, I don't think he really found himself until later in the game, found the confidence to say like, hey, I'm doing it my way. And so, and in fact, he was so much the team player in the early going that he would say to us, he'd be like, listen, if somebody needs to eat a vote to be the decoy, I'll do it. I'm fine. Like, I'm not worried about it. So he was kind of that guy. He's a guy that everybody, well, I'll speak for the people on Malolo. Like, we all enjoyed talking to him, and because most of us come from different parts of the country where, like, his experience, being from kind of in the country in Eastern Kentucky is just different from what we're used to. So, the things that he knows, the place, like we'd have conversations about like, okay, where do you like to, what's your favorite fast food restaurant? Like they, I don't know, like they have different things. They didn't. Like he's had a different experience. So he's like, I found him fascinating to talk to. And he's also, I mean, you saw it on TV. He's like very charismatic, and he's just interesting on TV and interesting in person. So that's the Donathan I got. And he was never, I think I said this before, but he was never at risk in those first 6 days. Like never, despite the fact that we always talk about how small he was and weak and all this stuff. Like, he just was never the guy that anyone was going after. And then to see him later in the game, you know, I had heard like Bradley came back, right? So Bradley spent time with Donathan. Now Bradley sees things through his own lens. So he came back and he's like, oh, Donathan, like he's getting he's getting arrogant out there or whatever. Like, you know, he's changed. And I didn't know I didn't know if that's just Bradley being Bradley. And to be honest, I mean, I wasn't with him after day 12, or after day 6 for that matter. So I can't speak to what he was really like and what really happened out there. But yeah, he seemed kind of wild, didn't he?
He did, and it's even like Wendell towards the end was like, "What is he doing?" He always just has these truth things. Like,
I'll give him this; he made it a little fun.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
He's a fun guy. Period.
Yeah, and So who else was there? I'm trying to think if there was anybody else that you like played with that like we didn't get like a good read on. Because I mean, I know you had Chelsea. What was Chelsea like? Because we talked to Bradley, we talked to Kelly about that.
So Chelsea was, you know, what I said about her when I got voted out, or like in my post game press, was she was real quiet. Like she didn't say a whole lot, and I didn't know whether she was just quiet and not really engaged, or whether she was like that, like tiger lurking in the tall grass, you know, like just kind of waiting. I didn't have a good sense of that, you know. And then you watch it back and you see her in these conversations, you know, saying, "Hey, let's go with one of the guys because they're not going to expect it," you know. So like she's putting in her 2 cents, and you know, Kellen and Bradley have gone on record as saying that, you know, all the ideas that they had were, you know, that Chelsea and Des had were put into their heads by Bradley and Kellen. You know, I don't know where the truth lies there, but you know, Des likewise, like Des during the game, you know, she didn't say a whole, I mean, other than just casual, like kind of small talk, she didn't say a whole lot that I saw, but I mean, she wasn't having strategy sessions with the Malolos, right? So yeah. And then you watch it on TV and she's like, "Hey, let's get rid of Brendan." So, you know, good for her.
That's why you didn't get to see the fun part of that.
Right. Exactly.
What about so we talked so much about Bradley though. What was Kellen like being on the wrong side of Kellen? What was that like?
So Kellen's interesting because she is like you know, she talks about how empathetic she is, and she is. And she is as sweet as they come and caring, but she strikes me as one of those people, and I don't mean this as a criticism, but like when you cross her, it's like you're seeing the different Kellen, right? And I think that's how she kind of played, right? She was like, she got along with everybody. I thought she was like, I really enjoyed talking to her. I thought she brought a very human element. Like, in fact, of the Navides, she was kind of the most, she was the warmest of the bunch for sure. And that even includes Seabass, who was like just Seabass being Seabass. So yeah, she was really warm and friendly, but I got the sense that like when you cross her, and I didn't even know all of it until I watched it on TV, you know, I think she feels in a very intense way. And so whether that's feeling affection or anger or whatever, like she's
very passionate about whatever it is. It doesn't matter which side.
There you go. And you know, in the time that I've spent with her since, I that's what I've gotten. I think it's pretty true to life. But she's somebody who, you know, she's very smart. I've got nothing good things to say about Kellen. And she's another one. You know, we were out on our trip and for the finale, like, you know, she's the kind of person who will go out of her way, like, to talk to my kids about what they're interested in. You know what I mean? Like, she's that kind of person, and it's genuine. She's not putting it on. Like, there's nothing for her to gain. So, that's who she is.
Yeah. Who would have just as we watched like your kids walk by in the background, like tiptoeing, it was funny. But who would have been your loved one had you made it to a loved one visit? Would it have been your wife?
Yeah. So she was first on the list, and you know, she had encouraged me all along the way. So I applied so many times, and when we didn't get picked for Blood versus Water, but I kept applying and then heard nothing. Like, it was at that for the first time in about 13 or so years, I thought like, this isn't going to work out. And she was the one that was like, no, it's going to happen. You know, it's going to happen. And she was behind me the whole time. And so, she's been nothing but supportive in the whole thing. And so it was going to be, I was really hoping to get her out there. It didn't work out. And then so that's that. I think, the second place would have been my son, Will, but you have to be 18 and he's 17. So he was not considered. And then my brother-in-law, Tom, who has been applying for as long as I have.
Okay.
Okay.
My wife's brother would have been the next guy if Margie couldn't make it.
You had to get Will out there. You would have had to do what Shane did, where you just go like crazy, going off cigarettes, and it's like, I need my son immediately. You had to like really lose it. No, that's cool, and it's funny because with like a blood versus water season, at least when we did it the first time, and I wouldn't be surprised if we ever saw it again, especially with returning players. Maybe not with just newbies, but it was funny that like Monica Culpepper finishes towards the back half of her season and ends up going and finishing second, but she gets asked back. They ask back a lot of like, I don't know if it's not, I wouldn't say random, but they are asking people a lot based on like, I think it's like pairings that like maybe they've talked to before. I mean, it's funny.
Yeah, I think you've got to have, that's the challenge, right? You've got to have a compelling loved one. So you could be great on TV, but if you don't have a compelling loved one, I think it's curtains, right? So you got to have somebody that can do it. And and actually, so when I applied for Blood versus Water the last time, it was with Margie, but she was doing it, my wife, but she was doing it really more for me than for her.
Mm-hmm.
So if they ever did Blood Water down the road, Will would be the guy. My son.
They haven't done a father-son, right? They have. I don't think they.
Keith and Wesley. Yeah. Right. But he Will. Yeah, Will could win. Yeah, Will could win the game. When I was out there with Michael, I mean, people have talked about this ad nauseum, but he is like really remarkable for his age, was at the time and is now. And I've only ever met one other person, and I'm around people that age all the time. I've only ever met one other person that I think could play with that at that level, and he lives in my house. So I hope he gets a chance one day.
What was it like to hear he was 18?
Oh gosh. So I didn't find out till after the game. And I didn't think I was being lied to, but like it blew my mind because when we went out there, I think he told us that he was almost 24. He's like, I'm 23, I'm going to be 24 soon. So I had 24 in my mind. And I remember thinking like, God, if you told me 28, I would believe that. And so, to hear he was 18. And the thing is, like, Michael's lived a life it's not your typical 18-year-old life, because he moved away he graduated high school a year early, and then he moved out to LA and was like living on his own in LA as a 17-year-old maybe. Who does that, right? So and he was interning at some real estate place, and so he was just living the life of somebody like 5 to 10 years older. And all that experience obviously served him well, and he's different though. I've never, like I said, I think my son could play at that level, but I've never met anybody that's quite like him, and like Michael, in terms of God, just seeming old and living old. That dude, I mean, you've met him, right? I mean,
I met him. Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane. Because when he comes up to you, I had met his mom first, and his mom was like, "Oh, it was great to watch you turn on him. I knew he was going to show you guys." Because I was so hard on Michael at first. I was sitting there, I was like, "This 18-year-old thinks he's going to fool these people. Get out of here! Like you're not going to have the life experience." But when you talk to him, you're like, "Yeah, this is I would assume he was my age." In a regular situation. I mean, the conversation, it's like when I was 18, I wouldn't be able to go and have like conversations with like 40-year-olds and stuff like that. Like it just would not in the way he's having them, not in the way, I wouldn't be able to do it. And I think that it does come from when I was 18, I was also, getting a birthday card that said, "Respect me, I'm an adult" on it. From my parents, and living, in their upstairs, and, he's out on his own. I moved to LA well after a year after I graduated college. There's a big difference between that and I'm going to get out of high school and just get out there and do it. I mean, that's wild. It's really crazy.
Oh, hey, I do want to clear something up. I remember you saying you were in I think it was your podcast with Kellen. You're like, yeah, somebody said, I think it was Brendan said that he needed a break from the game. Like, it was not me. I'll play again tomorrow. Yeah, no,
I wonder. I'm trying to remember that conversation.
I was only out there for 12 days.
No, you're ready to go.
I didn't take a toll. I mean, physically, I lost 13 pounds in 12 days, but I gained it back in 2.5 days. And I felt like, yeah, it was awesome. If I had to guess, like, I think in the 24 hours from when I finished the game, like the 24 hours following me getting booted out of the game, I think I probably had something like 25,000 calories.
Oh my
God. It was
God.
insane.
Oh
yeah.
my
God.
God.
And it does something funny to your brain where like you just keep going.
Yeah.
So
you're not going to stop eating.
Morgan and James and I were like the best eaters you've ever seen. Like we would just keep going. Like I was at Ponderosa for like 2 weeks before I went on the trip. And I'm in Australia eating like I haven't eaten in, weeks.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, so, and that was the challenge too, is like, I'm going to go home and everybody's going to know that I got voted out early. So I had to like, in the last week or so of the trip, I had to like, kind of like restrict myself and go on a diet so people wouldn't know that I was,
you were like,
like gaining weight. Yeah. Yeah, when you got voted out, did you finish your dinner? I forgot to ask that after you ate all those Hershey's Kisses. Did you finish your meal?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so I had, that night I had the bacon cheeseburger and the fries and the pizza and a milkshake and cheesecake and those Planters jars of peanuts like this big. I had one of those and I had
oh my God,
this is all that night. Anyway, a lot. And so and then I was able to just put it all down. It worked out for me. So.
Well, I apologize for saying it was you. There was it's like that was like the cheapest bar in LA I've ever gone to. So I forget who said it to me, but it wasn't Brendan. My bad.
You heard it here first.
Somebody did say it to me though, and I thought it was interesting because like I do think that there is something to be said. Yeah, you played for 12 days, so you're like, get me out there. Like I'm ready. I'll get on a plane right now. But I do think there's something to be said for like the people who make it a little bit further. They're like, you get so trapped in that way of thinking that when you play the second time, like Malcolm was like, what did I just do? Like, what did I just step into? Yeah,
no, I could see that. And I don't know what that feels like. Like, I don't know what it feels like to be out there for 39 days or 30 days or whatever. So, I'm sure it takes a different toll. But for me, after 12, like I felt depleted, but like emotionally, mentally.
Well, I wanted to ask you that too. How do you think you would have held up had you gone, maybe let's say, I don't know when like the first big reward was, like a big feast. Yeah. But like, let's say you'd gone like 6 more days without eating. How do you think you would have held? Because you didn't really have much, like you didn't have like fat to burn.
Yeah, no. And I've gotten that question a bunch because I was in a pretty bad way just in those last days. So all I can say is I would have figured something out. It's a matter of, so we had snails that we pulled off of rocks, and we had like Bradley talked about in these like weird kind of turd looking fruit things. I don't even know, but they hung from trees. I don't even know what they were. So we had things, and I just would have eaten more of those things and figured it out until, I do know that like they got later in the game. There was a point, I think it was like day 25 or something, where they got replenished, right? So we started out the game with like the amount of rice that you could fit in, I don't know, like in a, it was like a container this big. I mean, you saw it on the show. Yeah. But I think like about midway through the game, they got more and they got like a sack of rice. And so I've heard stories of a lot of the people gaining weight over the last like week or two of the game because they finally got calories and their bodies were like hoarding those calories. So I don't know. All I can say is I would have figured it out one way or the other. I will say that if I ever played again, I'd go in 5 or 10 pounds heavier because like the way Dr. Joe put it to me after the game, he's like, listen, every pound is worth 2 days. Think of it that way. Like at the rate that you're losing weight and you're burning calories, every pound's worth 2 days. So like if you had come in even 5 pounds heavier, you wouldn't have felt like you did on day 12 until day 22, and so that's a huge deal. So yeah, if I ever did it again, I'd want to come in shape, but I'd come in a little heavier.
Yeah, because I remember Jonathan Penner did that for when he played Philippines. He was like, this way when I hit the merge, I'm at my fighting weight and I'm ready to go. Like that was like his wording. Because that's, it's crazy the first time you play. It's like you see like you and Cole, like Cole on 35. I mean, Cole is huge. Yeah. And then he goes down like a ton of bricks at that one thing. And you're like, oh my God, like, because this guy has nothing to burn.
Yeah, well, and I made, it was a strategic move on my part. I had seen Jeremy, because I thought about it. I was like, okay, either I'm going to come in heavier, or I'm going to restrict my calories and try to actually affect my metabolism, like slow my metabolism in the month or two before the game. And so I went that way because I had seen Jeremy Collins talk about how he had basically trained himself to work off of fewer calories. So my thought was like, okay, if I'm used to eating 3,000 calories a day and then I back it down to 200, I'm going to be hurt, you know? So like maybe if I can train myself to still work out and still do stuff off of fewer calories, I'll be in better shape. And that didn't work at all because I got out there, my metabolism was still cranked up, and I just, you know, I was in a bad way. And like before the game, pregame Ponderosa, Chris Noble and I were the only two people, like, so I restricted my calories and basically tried to get like efficient in like 5 weeks or so before I got to pregame Ponderosa. In those days at pregame Ponderosa, Chris Noble and I were the only two people that consistently would go up and get seconds or thirds of food because I was then trying to like load up, right? Like I was trying to kind of store up. It's like carbo loading before a race, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
Yeah, that's it's crazy because I think it depends on the person a lot of the time. Like
yeah,
I don't feel
everyone
like
has a
Penner
different advice.
I don't feel like Penner has like a super fast metabolism, so he can get away with it a little bit more. But like you and Jeremy, I'm surprised Jeremy had success with that because I would think Jeremy would be somebody who's just burning through it like nothing.
Well, you know, and what I wonder is like now thinking back on it, was that interview from his first time playing or his second time playing?
That's
you know,
true.
like maybe when he went back, I don't know. But.
Yeah. Well, we're at 2 hours. We're over 2 hours, Brendan. I don't know how you're feeling over here.
Wow.
It flies, right? Like you don't even realize.
I think we're probably down to a viewer at this point.
We had 72, so that's okay.
Yeah, not bad.
Keeping it going. You know, the Westworld finale's on now though, so we might lose everybody. So.
Oh, it's a season finale.
So what do people want to know that they don't get from watching the show, like that I haven't already talked about?
Could you give us an appropriate pre-jury trip like story?
Sure, like a PG.
I guess whatever you're allowed to say. How about
right. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. We're not.
I mean, we don't care. It's just whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I watched Bradley. I watched Bradley tell the story of him getting us kicked out of a bar in Australia for drinking lady champagne. So I won't retell that one. And it's funny because he was so proud. Like he used to only tell the first part of the story. He never told the punchline. He'd be like, "Yeah, I got us kicked out of a bar in Australia," which sounds really tough, you know. Until you realize that it's for drinking lady champagne, and then it's not quite as tough. So let me think if there's a good one I can tell. The last night we were there, we had let me say this. This is maybe I'll make this. I'll twist this a little bit to like kind of a heartwarming thing. But the people. So when you're at Ponderosa, there are some people that work for Survivor that are there, like people that have come over from LA or whatever, and then there are these Fijian people that work at it's a resort, right? So other parts of the year it's open for business, and so those people are there working, and they're really cool. They and they really they take us in. Like when we left, they all cried as they hugged us and we left. Like it's really heartwarming, like how quickly they become attached and the relationships we built with those people. And so they have there's this stuff called kava, which is like a root that they grind up. You've had kava?
Yeah.
So it tastes like dirt, kind of. Muddy water.
On Vanuatu, they always make them drink it. And I'm like, that looks disgusting.
Yeah. So it tastes like it looks. And so anyway, this guy Ross, who worked there, was a really nice guy. This Fijian guy. He was very proud of the kava ceremony, so he wanted us to do. So he elected. I guess at every kava ceremony, you have a chief. And so he elected me the chief because I think I was the old guy. He elected me the chief. And so he kept pumping me with kava. So that now, to this day, James and various others call me chief. Like that's what that's my name from Survivor. Not because I was the captain in the show, but because of this kava ceremony. Anyway, so I you know what, I'm gonna stop that. I got to be careful. So I'm going to just stop that story. But yeah, no, I will say this. We had a great time on Ponderosa. We had a great time because the people that were there took great care of us. And then after on the trip, we did things that people dream about, like we like scuba dive the Great Barrier Reef and went on like whitewater rafting tours and did all this stuff. And I think we all had our kind of highs and lows, but I think even Bradley had fun once or twice.
There you go.
Like if you look at the pictures,
twice, though.
like if you look at the pictures, like you have to dig for a while, but you'll find a couple where he smiled.
That picture I think you posted of all of you on the bus, and he's just got the thing over his head.
Yeah.
That was so funny.
Yeah. Although he was sick. Like to be fair, he was so he got there last, and so he didn't have that kind of bonding time with us before we all went on the trip.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, he was sick, so he had to come late. I think he told you guys about that.
Yeah.
So
oh yeah, we heard.
How was it like being like even in the same hotel as him when all that was going on? Was it a disaster? Was it just like the whole hotel hallway just like reek and like?
No, we were on a different floor. Thankfully, Morgan took the bullet on that one. But because they were like, we were in these little like apartments. It was like apartment style that we'd rent these apartments for a week. We were in 2 cities, and in each one we'd rent these apartments. So like they're 1-bedroom apartments with 2 beds. So I mean, they were probably sleeping 4 feet from each other.
Oh my god!
So he was tearing it up all the time.
Oh god!
she was paying the price. But they're still friends after all that, so I guess it worked out.
There you go. Hey, that's the bonding experience, right? It's like, hey,
I suppose so.
You can get through that. I don't know. You gave us a lot more insight. I will say you gave us a lot more insight to the casting thing because you've been doing it for so long. And I feel like we had talked to Troy Zan a lot about the casting, and he didn't give us as in depth, but it's funny like how much you went through to just do that. I mean, I think you gave us a lot of like the behind the scenes stuff. It's funny because like you were out there for 12 days. And it's still like, to me, because you are the person who we've interviewed who was out there for the least amount of time. Yeah. But it's crazy to me, all of the stuff that goes on and all of the layers and just like every little thing. It's like people don't realize like in those 12 days, we might have seen 3 hours of TV. You guys did live like 24 hours a day for 12 straight days doing this absolute insane, strategizing and the physical exhaustion and everything. So yeah. I just think it's crazy.
And every part of it's like, so when you've been after it for that long, I think even if you've just been after it for a little while, like you kind of savor every part of it. I remember before I flew out there, the person I dealt with in casting for a long time was like, listen, pregame is the worst. It's boring. You're going to hate it. Just deal with it. It's going to be okay. You'll get through it. And I never felt that way. Like I soaked it all in. Like when you fly to LA and you're there for a night, like, I thought that was so cool, Then you come down and you get on the shuttle to go to the airport to fly to Fiji, right? And you're getting your first look at everybody, and like everything is, when you built it up in your mind, like every little piece of it. You get on board the plane. Like I sat next to Morgan on the plane, which was weird. I don't think they intended for that, but the plane was packed. Now we had a handler from Survivor sitting right next to us, so like it wasn't we're gonna try to get away with anything, but like all those things, like all those experiences are part of it. I mean, even this is part of it, right? Like who does this, right? So, so I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm, at this point, I'm in my 23rd minute of my 15 minutes of fame, but like it's, I'm enjoying it. And I guess I will say, because I was after it for so long, I don't think I took anything for granted. And before I left, before I went to the game, my kids, who were both teenagers, and my wife, they all wrote me letters, and basically they all said the same thing, which was, it was like really insightful. It was basically like, look, you have what it takes to win the game, but you're going to go as far as the game lets you go. And so whatever happens, like soak in every second of it. Enjoy all.
That is really good advice.
Well, it was. And I felt like, and it was said more eloquently than that, but I felt like I kind of remember those words. So when I got voted out, I thought and believe me, I was so disappointed. And I have, it's not an exaggeration when I tell you, I have thought about it every day since. It's been a year, right? In fact, the anniversary of me getting voted out was on my birthday a couple of days ago. So like I think about it all the time. However, like I didn't let it ruin my trip? Like, right? Because those words were ringing through my head as I got voted out and as I was at Ponderosa. I'm like, okay, well, I can either be unhappy and pissed off and then I'll regret forever not embracing this. Like, how many people get to be at Ponderosa with all these other Survivor players and like eat all they want, drink all they want, and have all these crazy adventures and do stupid things that no one, like, I mean, it's, you know, how many people get to go on this trip where they do all these things? Like, so I didn't want to look back on all that and think I could have enjoyed it, and I didn't because I was too busy feeling sorry for myself. So I really did. I soaked it all in. Like, I tried to enjoy every bit of it. And then I kind of processed the disappointment. I put it to the back of my mind, and then I processed the disappointment after I got home.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that, I think, because I don't know, because of the encouragement of the people around me. Like, and I think a lot of us, when you get voted out, here's the thing, like, it's disappointing to get voted out. But if if your people are behind you, like, I never worried for a second that my family or my friends would be disappointed in me, but I was worried that they'd be disappointed for me. You know what I mean? Like, when they found out that I didn't make it to the end, right? They knew how much it meant to me, so they'd be disappointed on my behalf. And that was hard. But like, I always felt like everybody was kind of squarely in my corner. And then when I got voted out, they're like, look, they're in my corner. So they're like, oh, it's everybody else's fault, not your fault. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Probably it's mostly my fault. So, so it's been a good run, and I've got no complaints.
No, that's awesome. It's great. It's always great to hear that, because you do hear, like, sometimes when people go early, they just, like, lose it. They're like, God, that was terrible, or whatever. You had, I mean, all the way back in, like, Australia, I know it was, like, the worst thing ever to happen to Deb when she went out first. It was like,
well, it's okay. I never got to a point for even a second where I thought, I'm not going to watch this anymore. And I know that happens to a lot of people where they're like, I just can't watch it. I was never there. I was never close to being there. I will say that watching the first episode after you're gone.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's a gut punch. And then watching the merge episode and watching them all celebrate, you can't, I'm going to be honest, like, you can't help but feel jealous. Like, oh, that's what, if only for this or that, like, I would have been there. We all think that. And then you get to the loved one. So the hardest ones, I think the hardest three moments are the episode you get voted after you get voted out, when you don't see yourself and you feel like you're just in the rear view, right? The merge, and then the loved ones. Those three are hard. And then by the finale, you're at the finale, so you're, like, wrapped up in it. You're like, yeah, here I am.
I'm in it again.
Yeah, like, honestly, I mean, I felt like I was pretty far in the rear view until I was back in the scene again and back with my friends that had played. And so that's the other thing for me is I think that I think there are a lot of other casts where I would have maybe had a better shot for things to go my way. But I think there are also a lot of other casts that are not as tight with each other as our group is. And even, like, I've spent some time talking about Bradley, like, he's a good guy. And we, like, I think, I won't speak for him, but I have a lot of respect for him. And when we're not feuding, like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, a good Survivor spinoff would be to watch the two of us try to live together for a while. Like, it wouldn't be long before I killed him, but
you give him no shot in that, huh?
Yeah, you're
okay, come on.
Yeah.
But no, even Bradley, like, he's we all are friends, and I don't know of. Look, there are some people, and, like, you've had other people on that talk about other Survivors where they don't get along that great, maybe in the game, but I think everybody's on at least decent terms. And I don't know. I think that's pretty rare.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it says a lot, because I know, like, from past casts, I think people either get, like, just tired of it, or they're just like, I don't care anymore. But it seems like every time we do one of these, or every time we talk to somebody, it's like somebody else is coming up being like, oh yeah, I want to do this, or oh, I want to talk about that, or, like, anybody you reach out to is very receptive on your cast of, like, pretty much, like, really talking about anything. And it's really good, because you also like to see that, like, it's not a bitter season, because I'm not saying that, like, somebody, like, like, even the people on 35, I'm not saying that they're bitter. It's just, like, you could tell that, like, they didn't have, I don't feel like, maybe as necessarily as good of an experience by the end of it, where they were just like, okay, I need to step away or something like that.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, and I think there's probably Survivor fatigue. I mean, you talked about it, like, with especially some of the guys that have been on the circuit, like Dom and Wendell, where they're just on it all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that everybody gets to a point where they're ready to disengage and just have time with their family and their people. But yeah, I don't think anyone has come away, to my knowledge, no one has come away thinking like, man, I wish I hadn't done that, Or I think, and I could be wrong, but I think like maybe one of the measures is how many people out of the cast would sign up to do it again. And I think that maybe not all 20 would have said, yes, sign me up again right after the show ended. But I think that by now, I think pretty much everybody that I know of is there that were like, yeah, if you let us do it again, we'd go do it again.
Yeah.
So, and that tells you that like there aren't those lingering bad feelings about, kind of the whole experience. I think everybody looks back in a positive way on how things went.
And that's always one of the last questions we ask is, would you play again? Yours is it's really deceptive here. Would you play again, Brendan?
Yeah, I'm being real coy.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like I have, I feel like I have unfinished business out there, and certainly there are things I could have done better, and I think it's hard. I think it's hard for somebody like me to go out there and have success. You've got to catch a break or two. But I would argue that I didn't catch a whole lot of breaks the first time around, and so maybe if maybe I get one, and then it's anybody's game, and I think also it has to do with the mix of people, right? So we talked about that before. Like there are a few other seasons where I think I might have an easier time kind of blending in, and so yeah, I'd love to give it another shot because for me, first of all, it's fun. Like the game itself is fun for me, but I think I can. I think I can do a lot better than I did. And that's kind of what drove me from the very first time I saw it. I watched the show and I'm like, okay, if you made a show that suits what I can do, that's it, right? Because I'm not like really good at anything in particular. But I feel like if there is a game that maybe suits my strengths, this is one of them. And so I want to have a shot to, maybe have a little better outcome next time.
Yeah. And if let's say they did like an all pre-merge thing, and you saw Bradley over there, would you vote him off first, or would you guys try to work together?
God, who knows?
That's a good political answer.
Look, I think you got to be flexible. So if it all depends on the dynamic, the group dynamic, and if it made sense to work, I'd definitely work with Bradley if it made sense, and if it didn't, then yeah, I wouldn't. It'd be fun to vote him out real fast.
There you go. Yeah.
We just have to see how it all goes. I think a pre-merge season would be interesting because a pre-merge season makes the merge episode like the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everybody, because and frankly, every episode prior to the merge is like the stakes are so high because everybody's just trying to get there because they all feel like if I can just get there, then I'm gonna wreck shop. Like then it's on, right? So getting to that merge, you always on every season you see everybody like celebrating and you have the merge feast and everybody's all pumped. Like you would see a merge feast like none other if you had a pre-merge season because all those people are so desperate to prove that they can make it happen once they get past the merge. So I think it'd be an interesting concept because you basically have a finale mid-season and then you have a finale at the end.
And I love this because I think about like a 10 versus 10 and I think about, okay, like those first 7 boots are going to be just like so like it's going to be insane.
Oh, yeah.
People are going to be like you're saying, like the merge is almost like winning. So like people are going to be going crazy in the pre-merge to make anything happen.
Yep. Yeah. I think it'd be a wild first half of the season. And then the back half, like I said, I think, anyone that signs up for that believes, like I believe that if I get past the merge, I could find a way. Right. So everybody, and I think, anyone who was a target early on also believes that if they got on a season with other big targets, that's easier, right? And so, yeah, I think a returning player season suits. I think you could take a lot of the people from our pre-merge, put them on a returning player season, and you might see them get pretty far.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Alexa, do you have anything you want to throw in here, or Brendan, do you have anything else you want? We're at 2.5 hours now, so I mean, like, I guess we could like kind of wrap it up.
We could filibuster just set a record right now.
Yeah.
Seriously, what was I don't know, Troyzan, I think
Troyzan clocks in like 5 hours. Like,
yeah, I think
like you need like a meal in between. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, I remember I did that one, and I was like, I had gone to my friend's birthday the night before, and I had to actually get my roommate to get me food and bring it in because I was like about to pass out during that one. So that was an endurance challenge.
So my wife left, picked up my daughter. She'd gone out, picked her up, brought her home, went out and did a swim workout, came back, and just walked in and gave me like one of these. Like, what are you doing?
Amazing.
They're just hanging out.
Yeah.
Amazing. Love it.
Right.
But
we'll let you go if that.
Do you have anything else you want to add here though, Brendan? Is there any like final closing word here you got?
Hold on. I wrote down a few notes. I'm gonna see if there's anything I haven't hit.
You're more prepared than like 80% of our guests.
Wow, Alexa's throwing everybody under the bus.
I'm throwing 80% of people.
And we won't say who you are.
No, little stuff. So as I was watching Bradley talk, I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. That didn't happen. So I have a few little quibbles, but I don't want to. Okay, fine. There's one.
There's one. Here we go.
Here it is. So both Bradley and Kellen, and I'm puzzled by this one, they were talking about like the terrible condition of the Malolo camp. And now I'm not going to sit here and brag about the Malolo camp, but they both said, they're like, oh yeah, there was a vomit pile. Okay. Vomit pile. And that we would just like throw our legs off the side of the shelter and piss off the shelter.
Oh, they did say that.
Yeah. Now, so I did some research. I'm like, first of all, I'm not aware of anyone vomiting except for me off the side of the boat. I'm not aware of anyone vomiting in the game. And so I called around like Michael and James and Steph and all these people like, do you remember anyone throwing up or making a pile of vomit or any disgusting body fluid? And nobody can recall any of this. So I'm puzzled as to the that and then like people flinging their legs off the side of the shelter and peeing. That would have to have been in Navidi because the Malolos slept around the fire.
There you go. There you go. Slept around the fire.
Wow.
There you go.
So let's close with that. Vomit and urine is the way we're closing this thing out.
I think at some point we're going to need a podcast. I don't even think Google Hangouts does this. I want like the 5 of us, and I just want this all to just blow up in front of everybody. I want like you, Brendan and Callan, or you, Bradley and Callan, to just.
Well, that would be great, but we could get another. You could pick any other witness, and I think they'll back the truth.
They're back the truth.
The truth will set you free.
I love it. Well, do you have any closing words that you want to say, or is that
do you want your closing? Do you want your closing?
I think that gosh, I don't know how you close out with anything but vomit.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to end it.
No, I think that's it. I'm ready to sign off.
All right. Well, Alexa, before you do your closing thing, I just want to say that I'm actually going to finally do this, and I've been talking about how I'm like writing something up. So I wrote like this whole thing on like the best pre-merge casts, and I ranked them from 36 to 1 because I thought it was fun. And so I'm going to post it. I'm going to do it in groups of 6 because I write way too much. I'm long-winded. So anybody who wants to just listen to me ramble nonsense, I wrote a ranking down. So
what's the spoiler? I won't tell anybody. Who's number 1?
I can't tell. I'll tell you once we log off. I'm going to tell you. But it was the Ghost Island cast that got me thinking because we all kept saying this is the best one, and James keeps posting that you're the best one. So I was like, I got to actually do this, and nobody's ever ranked it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I'm going to post the first one on Tuesday. It'll be 36 to 31. I'll give you a hint, Brennan. You're going to have to wait a little bit before you guys come up. So
Ooh.
Yeah, I think we're good. I think it's a good group. That would be interesting. You know what I think would be really interesting? I don't think they'll ever do it. And maybe it would be boring. I don't know. But I would love to see, like, if you just ran a season back, all 18 or 20 or whatever.
Yes.
It would just be fascinating to see, like, okay, the person that won, where did they finish? Did they finish last because everybody wanted to get them out? The person that finished, like, would the order change much, or would it kind of stay roughly what it was? Like, I think that would be really interesting. I don't know if it'd be good TV, but it'd be interesting.
I think Jeff has said, I think Dalton Ross asked Jeff that once, and Jeff has said he would want to do that, but I think I guess that just requires like those 18 or 20 people to say, yes, I do want to do this again.
Yeah,
which is probably hard with medical and time commitments and stuff. But
maybe you can have Phil's number 1 pre-jury, group square off against his number 2 and number 3 tribes.
That would be fantastic.
Free tie breakout. There you go.
That would be really great.
The problem is that you need an even number of men and women probably, and it maybe doesn't work out.
True.
We'll have to look. We'll have to take. Also, it would be.
You'll have to read.
Based on who my top 3 are, there'd be a lot of people on that season.
Yeah.
So there's a lot there.
Spoiler.
But yeah, there you go. There's another spoiler. I'm just gonna keep throwing it out there. No, by the time that I get to like actual 6 through 1, nobody's gonna be reading anymore anyway. So, but you know, hey, I think. Wait, how many words? I haven't even finished like the entire thing, but I've written 24,000 words. So, you know, just rambling.
Hey, like any good
almost
Survivor,
as many calories as you ate in Australia.
Yeah,
right. No, but like any good Survivor application video, Phil, you gotta hook them early. So make sure that you don't lose the crowd with with writing Moby Dick for your first entry. Like we don't need a novel, right?
Well,
you gotta
we'll see.
Phil, maybe for your next audition video, you should just read your article and then turn off the camera.
Exactly. Hey, I'm long-winded, man. Alexa and I do these podcasts on a 45-minute episode for like an hour and a half sometimes. So that's what we do.
Yep.
That's it. But
their thing.
All right, Alexa. Well, if you want, I finally got real advice from Brendan there. Instead of ending on vomit and urine, he gave me real advice. Don't start with Moby
this is good. Okay, this is where we're at. So Phil and I obviously took a 2 to 3 week break. Phil was driving across the country, and I was patiently waiting for him to get here. We were supposed to hang out on Tuesday, but he's ditching me, so probably just to write this article thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of back. I'm going to be traveling in and out for work for a little bit, so we're going to be filling the space of our usual podcast with these articles. So keep an eye out every couple days. Like we'll post them on Facebook, post them on Twitter. But we are trying to get some more interviews, so stay tuned, and we will hopefully be back very soon.
Thank you so much, Brendan, for coming on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.